Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku failed to save everyone part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃𝗧𝗃 So let's start the video. In the 4 years after Izuku, 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃, lots of heroes and the big three failed to stop 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗃 and Shigaraki, Earth's population dropped from 8.9 billion people to just a few thousand because of 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗁's Nomu armies killing more than 99% of the people they encountered. The ones left alive were to be nothing more than simple slaves that will build 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗁's empire, and their children will be the ones who serve him loyally. Izuku fought and fought for those 4 years, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't catch up to 𝗵𝘃𝗁 until he lost his daughter, and he disappeared for 1.5 years to train to get strong enough. Tokyo was now a complete wasteland with no signs of life. It was a massive crater with thousands of destroyed buildings lining the crater. Inside the crater stood 3 figures. The first one was a tall, well-built man with short white hair, a bronze horn and red eyes. He was wearing a nice tailored suit and had a dark grin on his face. The second figure was a man with waist-length white hair and was covered in nasty scars, along with the right side of his face being burnt to the point his healing quirk didn't work on it. The last figure was a 20-year-old man with green hair that was turning white from stress and mental and physical exhaustion. He was wearing a badly damaged dark green costume with white arm bracers and black leg bracers. Around his neck were the rags of yellow cape that was barely hanging on by a thread. His name was 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃, and he is facing 𝗵𝘃𝗁 and Shigaraki, hoping to finally end this here before any more innocents have to die. Ah, so you finally come to face me. First I killed all your friends and teachers along with stealing most of their quirks, then I killed your mother, and lastly I killed your precious little daughter, but not before I stole her quirk and let her see you before it was all taken away, said 𝗵𝘃𝗁, grinning darkly. Izuku's heavily scarred face looked up, showing his once bright green eyes that were now devoid of any emotion. No. I've come here to kill both of you. Ha, do you really think you could kill both me and Sensei? Said Shigaraki, grinning darkly. It's not that I think I can, said Izuku as green lightning arched around him, it's that I will. A massive sonic boom was heard and Izuku's fist slammed into Shigaraki, launching him across the destroyed city before he spun his body and threw a kick at 𝗵𝘃𝗁. Said villain raised his arm and expanded his muscles, and his skin hardened since he was using Kirishima's quirk. The blow sent him flying back, and Izuku then turned around, shooting off towards Shigaraki. DMNU! Screamed Shigaraki as his arms suddenly started multiplying, showing hundreds of grotesque hands coming at him. Izuku bent his leg and kicked it, making him disappear in the blink of the eye. He appeared at his side and punched him away, where his body went ragdolled across the ground. He looked up and saw Izuku coming at him, so a sinister grin formed on his face, and he raised his arm and released a massive explosion from his palm. Before he could smile or goad about it, Izuku slammed his knee into his chin, shattering the bone and causing his chin to end up where his eyes were from the force of it. Shigaraki reached out and grabbed Izuku's arm, and it started to decay, but he didn't even flinch as One for All powered up in his right leg to the point his skin was peeling off. No more 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃, said Izuku as he kicked his body on half before he lifted his foot and stomped his leg down on his head, causing all of Japan to shake. My, that's not very hero-like. Deku, aren't heroes supposed to arrest villains, not try and kill them? Also, where's your smile? Said 𝗵𝘃𝗁, walking towards him. I'm no longer a hero. I'm your executioner, said Izuku, looking up at him. I will bear the burden of killing your and Shigaraki if it means your evil can never affect this world again. His stump then shot out black tendrils that formed into a skeletal-like arm to replace the one he lost. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 gritted his teeth before he calmed himself down. He's defeated Izuku multiple times now, so what's one more? Gene. In a mere instant, Izuku's fist slammed into 𝗵𝘃𝗁's gut, making the man puke blood. Izuku then grabbed him by his throat and choke slammed him to the ground before he reared his fist back to try and cave his skull in. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 saw this and activated another quirk he stole. His body shot out fire and ice, which made Izuku go flying. I must admit your classmates' quirks are quite something. Though there is one quirk I wish I was able to acquire. What was his name? Yes, Aizawa, Such a shame he had you kill him and burn his body to prevent me from getting it. Izuku closed his fist as his BLD started to boil as that memory resurfaced. Midoriya. You need to kill me, said a very weak Aizawa looking at him, Ino-sensei. I won't lose you too, yelled a 17-year-old Izuku in tears. Izuku, listen. We can't take any chances of 𝗳𝗵𝗃 or Shigaraki getting my quirk. Please, said Aizawa. No, I'll find another way. Me and Eri need you, you're all we have left. Aizawa let a smile form on his face and he placed his hand on Izuku's shoulder. Izuku, just know I'm very proud of it. You were always like a son to me. If I ever had a kid, I'd hope they'd grow up to be like you. Izuku started crying even harder at hearing this. Please. Don't leave us. Don't make me have to kill you. I'm sorry, Izuku. But this is the only way. His eye then turned red and he forced a knife into Izuku's hand before he started to strangle him. Izuku started gasping for air and tried to summon his quirk but couldn't, and he looked up at Aizawa's red eyes seeing tears in them, and he did what had to be done. With a quick stab, Izuku stabbed him through the heart, making him groan in pain as he fell back. I'm proud of you, Izuku. Protect Eri. Then I'm sorry. Aizawa's body slumped to the floor as BLD started to pool under him and Izuku started to cry harder, letting out animalistic-like screams of pain. He knew why he wanted him to do it. It was to make Izuku become stronger and to make sure 𝗳𝗵𝗃 never got erasure. Izuku gently picked up Aizawa's broken body and placed it on a couple logs before he lit it, letting the fire slowly start to burn his body away. After an entire hour, the fire died down and there was only a smoldering pile of ash now. The sky then started to downpour. Papa, where's Uncle Aizawa? Said Eri, walking up to him. He's in a better place, Eri. A much better place, said Izuku, letting out a choked sob. Eri walked over to him and hugged him as hard as she could, and Izuku fell to his knees hugging her as he broke down in tears. Izuku glared at him but then saw something out of the corner of his eye. It was Shigaraki, and he only had one arm and most of his body was gone and wasn't healing. All that was left of his body was from the upper chest to his head along with his right arm. Sir, said Shigaraki, trying to drag himself towards him. It hurts. I can't heal it. Don't worry, Tomura, it will end soon. He then reached over and touched his face. You've served your purpose, now goodbye. Shigaraki started to scream in pain as his emissary started to rip all of his quirks out of him before he used decay to kill him. How ironic. The one he trusted the most betrayed and killed him with his very own quirk, said 𝗳𝗵𝗃, letting out a deep throaty chuckle at the irony. Izuku didn't say anything and just stared at him with a slight glare added to it. You truly are a monster and I will end you. He then shot off and used smokescreen to cloud AFO's vision. The villain just chuckled at the futile attempt and activated heat vision, but the next thing he saw were two massive masses heading towards him, so he quickly used all his healing and defense quirks to protect himself. Black Whip slammed into both his arms, overwhelming his defense quirks but not his healing ones. Izuku then appeared before him and tried to punch him, but AFO created a massive wall of ice which forces Izuku to jump back to dodge the attack. Izuku then sent 𝗳𝗵𝗃 into his leg and kicked the massive ice wall, destroying it. Once he destroyed the ice wall, a massive torrent of flames came at him, but Izuku sent a quick Delaware smash to dissipate the fire. Texas smash. Another massive airburst made AFO get sent back, and before he could react, Izuku managed to punch him with enough force to shatter his ribcage. AFO went to grab Izuku to kill him, but Izuku cranked the power to 120% and blasted him away. You know, I'm quite surprised that such a weak failure like you survived, unlike all your other friends. I mean, you were once quirkless, but now you have a very powerful quirk. Too bad you are too weak to stop me. I mean, you weren't able to save anyone, and now they are all dead. Izuku's BLD started to boil but tried to keep his anger restrained. In that moment of him not paying as much attention, AFO attacked and managed to shatter Izuku's right leg. Now give me 𝗳𝗵𝗃. You'll have to kill me first, said Izuku. Both of them then punched each other with enough force to destroy a small island, and it sent massive shockwaves across Japan that the very few survivors felt. United States of Smash, screamed Izuku as he forced his right leg to move and kick AFO away. The force of the kick sent him away, but it also completely destroyed his right leg. He quickly forced Black Whip to cover his leg to make it so he can still walk. I have to st. Before Izuku in the distance was Eri, who was standing there with a smile. Papa, what are you doing? Eri, said Izuku as for the first time since she died life came back to his eyes. Papa, why do you look so hurt? No. You're not Eri, said Izuku as his anger started to get too hard to contain. He of course I am Papa, said Eri with a smile. No. Eri is dead. I know so since I buried what was left of her body, said Izuku as his green lightning started to grow in intensity and hues of black were seen because of his anger. Eri walked towards Izuku and extended her hand. Papa id-. She didn't get to finish what she was gonna say as Izuku punched her in the face and the illusion faded, revealing AFO. How dare you? Said Izuku as the ground under him started to break and shake from the amount of power he was producing. His heart started to beat faster and faster as OFA was powering his body till the point it was started to break down. So you would hit your own child. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗵. He didn't get to finish the sentence as Izuku appeared before him and punched him with so much force the tectonic plate under Japan shifted and caused massive volcanic eruptions around the edges of the plate. I'm going to kill you. Izuku disappeared and moved so fast that AFO couldn't even see it until the force of the attack hit him with enough force that it blew half of his lower abdomen off. FO then felt his skull cave in from Izuku's kick that almost killed him if he didn't use rewind to heal himself before the injury. Kill him, 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 were the only thoughts going through Izuku's head as of this moment. FO turned and Izuku grabbed the upper part of his mouth and started to try and rip his head off. Air cannon. More of the area was destroyed and Izuku slammed into a massive pile of rubble and stood up while ripping the piece of rebar that was stuck in his stomach like it was nothing. Planet breaker smash. Screamed Izuku as he shot off towards AFO, who upon seeing Izuku come at him lifted his arm and combined multiple quirks together to release a massive explosion to try and stop him. His hopes were crushed when Izuku flew through the explosion, not even fazed about the fact he was covered in burns now. The punch hit AFO, which resulted in a shockwave that tore a chunk of the earth off, sending it to space. AFO's healing quirks were completely overwhelmed to the point he had to use all of the stored-up power of rewind to bring them back. He went to glare at Izuku, but when he saw him, he felt something he hasn't felt in a very long time. Izuku started to walk towards him, and he felt his heart starting to beat too fast since he was using 700% across his entire body. It was literally tearing him apart from the inside out, but he didn't care. All that mattered anymore was killing AFO once and for all. What the F are you? 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏. I am 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏, said Izuku as his voice was getting destroyed from the power of OFA coursing through him. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 terrified at what Izuku was becoming. He tried to run away, but he couldn't move his body, and he saw within his mind everyone whose quirk he stole was preventing him from escaping. Izuku's body started to glow from the power that was exploding in growth within him, and since he didn't care for his life no more, he ignored the pain and just continued to increase the power and send it all to his right arm. One for all. Izuku appeared before AFO, and his legs were beyond destroyed from the power he used to move in this one moment. Over 200 years of power from 8 previous users wielding this quirk that was given to Izuku, who increased the power of it to the point nothing could contain the power anymore, and it was released for one single punch, final smash. A massive explosion was felt and heard across the entire planet, and it was so powerful it tore the planet in half, with the other side of the planet being blown off, all but destroying it. Inside a massive crater that was over 400 miles wide and 2,000 feet deep was Izuku's broken form that laid on the ground and was slowly dying. His heart was failing, his lungs were destroyed, his body was broke beyond repair and was slowly falling apart like dust from the power that destroyed it. His tired eyes looked up at the fading stars because of the sun rise and watched them as his eyes slowly became faded. 𝗂𝗄𝗄𝗵𝗃𝗃. Ochako. Everyone. I'm coming home, said Izuku as he took his final breath before he closed his eyes one last time. What do you know about me? Why are you trying to help me? Yelled Todoroki, glaring at Izuku. Izuku looked around beyond shocked. He looked around at the sports festival arena beyond shocked as he was trying to figure out what was going on. Todoroki slammed his hand on the ground, launching a massive wave of ice. Izuku looked at him and his eyes widened in a mixture of fear and rage as a memory of when AFO stole it before he used it against him and burnt while also freezing him to death. Look at Todoroki's massive attack. 𝗵𝗃 a massive explosion happened and the entire arena was covered in smoke. The wind pressure from Izuku's punch was so powerful that in the stands the safety mechanism activated and seatbelts strapped everyone down. It took a few moments for the smoke to clear, but once it did, it showed Izuku standing still ignoring his broken arm while Todoroki was blown through the wall. Aizawa was looking at Izuku with slight concern. The look Izuku had on his face was one he's only seen on heroes who've lost everything. He stood up and left. He was going to get to the bottom of this. Winner is Izuku Midoriya. Izuku looked around still confused and started to walk away towards the halls so he could escape and try to figure out what's going on. Young Midoriya, said All Might in confusion. That wasn't like Izuku, and he stood up and started to walk away to go find him. Ochako and a couple other students also stood up and ran off to figure out what was going on and why Izuku suddenly did that. Izuku was walking down the halls of the stadium while also holding his head. He didn't understand what's going on. Did I get sent back in time or something? This makes no sense, said Izuku as he just now registered the pain in his broken arm and looked at it without any care. He's had worse happen to him. He went back to walking away. He needed to get away from all of this and figure out what's going on. Deku! Yelled a voice he never thought he'd hear again. Izuku slowly turned around and saw Ochako, Mina, Momo, Kirishima, Tsu, Denki and finally Jiro running up to him. When his eyes saw them, he was brought back to when he last saw them and how they were all brutally murdered, especially Ochako. Say goodbye to your friend Izuku, said Shigaraki as he placed his hand on Ochako's back and started to decay her before his very eyes. Uraraka! Yelled Izuku as he shot forward and ducked under Shigaraki's hand and punched him away before he quickly grabbed her, stopping her from hitting the ground. Deku! She wheezed as more and more of her body crumbled away. Stay with me, Ochako. We're gonna be heroes, remember? Yelled Izuku as he watched her left hand crumble away and her breathing became more labored. I'm sorry. Just know that. I love you, said Ochako, and with the last of her strength, she gently pressed her lips against his before she crumbled away to nothing. Nuu! Green lightning arched around him as he turned around and shot forward, punching Shigaraki with enough force to topple the building he was slammed into. Izuku quickly turned around and walked away. He couldn't look at them while remembering all of that. He channeled a small amount of OFA into himself and disappeared down the halls, leaving his friends behind, both worried and confused. Wait, Deku! Said Ochako loudly, trying to stop him, but it was too late and he was gone. What happened to him? This isn't like him, said Momo, slightly concerned since she knew he wouldn't normally act like this. I don't know. But he looked so scared and sad when he saw us, said Jiro, frowning in slight concern as well. She may not be best friends with him, but seeing him that sad was hard to stomach. Ochako grabbed her chest as she thought it over and remembered that look he gave them. It held so much pain and sadness in his eyes. I'm going to go help him. Kirishima went to say something, but Tsu grabbed his shoulder and shook her head, telling him that she has to be the one to do it. Izuku arrived in the bathroom and took a couple deep breaths as he looked at his reflection. My hair is green again. And I'm not covered in scars. He lifted up his good arm and touched his face in shock. Everything felt so real. Am I in the past? But why and how? Maybe it has to do with One for All. Nana. All he got was silence, but he did feel his quirk rile up for a moment. Izuku turned the water on and splashed it on his face, feeling it. This definitely isn't a dream, said Izuku, feeling the cold water pass over his hand. Oh right. My arm is still broken. He turned off the sink and walked away, heading to Recovery Girl's office to finally heal his broken arm. As he continued to walk down the hall, he couldn't help but remember how All for One used the arena to force SLV heroes to fight to the death for his own entertainment. After a couple minutes, he arrived at her office and did his best to ignore the look she was giving him. "Midoriya, what was that about, and why didn't you immediately come here?" said Recovery Girl, looking at him. "Can you please just heal my arm and take me out of the sports festival?" said Izuku, shocking her. "Why do you want to leave?" "You're in the finals," said Recovery Girl. "Please. I just can't fight in here anymore," said Izuku. She looked at him for a long moment before she sighed and agreed to take him out. She then gestured him to sit down so she can heal his broken bones and messed up arm. "Midoriya, is something bothering you?" she asked with slight concern. His eyes were just so empty and devoid of anything instead of being bright green gems full of life and happiness. "Don't worry, I'm fine. I just need to think everything over, that's all," said Izuku as he looked at his now healed arm and stood up, walking away, ignoring Recovery Girl yelling for him to come back so she can put it in a sling. He continued his way down the hall when he was stopped by a bandaged hand landing on his shoulder. "Midoriya, what's going on?" Izuku turned and looked at his teacher, and a memory flashed through his mind of when he was forced to kill him. "Nothing, sensei. I'm fine." "You are the exact opposite of fine, Midoriya. Your eyes are hollow and lifeless right now instead of being full of life like they usually are. Sensei, if I was to tell you, or anyone, why none of you would believe me? You'd think I'm just lying or I'm on something." Around the corner near the Ochako stopped and listened and trying to figure out what was wrong with Izuku. She knew this was wrong, but she was really worried about him. "Try me, Midoriya," said Aizawa in a calm tone. Izuku looked away from him. That was something that Aizawa noticed. It was like he was scared to look at him, so he just continued to stare at the ground. "I can't. So please leave me alone. I already resigned from the sports festival and I just want to be alone." "Are you sure? This could be your only chance till next year to get scouted out by a potential hero." "Yes. I'm sure." Aizawa stared at him for a moment longer before he sighed. "Fine, but just know if your mood doesn't improve, I'll be asking for answers." Izuku just nodded and walked away, leaving behind an even more worried Ochako and Aizawa, who was concerned since this isn't like Izuku at all. "Deku-kun!" yelled out Ochako, hoping to stop him, but he was gone. She looked down, feeling horrible since she wasn't able to help her friend and a person who she thinks she might have feelings for. "Aizawa-sensei, do you think Deku-kun will be alright?" she asked him. "I'm not sure." His eyes looked lifeless and as if he lost everything. As Izuku was about to leave the arena, he heard Present Mike speak up. "Hello everyone, I'm sorry to tell you this, but because of personal issues Izuku Midoriya has resigned, so the winner is Katsuki. Bakugo." A large explosion was heard and Katsuki's screaming and swearing could be heard all throughout the stadium. Izuku ignored it and walked towards UA's training grounds. He had to train and get stronger, not play these games. The fate of the future laid on his shoulders and he wasn't going to fail again. He reached into his pocket for his phone. He had Nizu's number thankfully, and he sent him a message telling him he's going to be using one of the training grounds until they return to school. 5 days later. Izuku could be seen in training ground C at UA. He's been training for 5 days straight and only stops when his body collapses or he eats and drinks the food Nizu sends him via a robot. He's been staying at the training ground to stay away from everyone. Every time he looks at any of his friends, teachers or his mom, all he can see is their dead bodies laying on the ground. 8%, he said as green lightning arched around him and he shot off, bouncing from building to building to try and build up more speed and momentum before he had enough, and he shot down, slamming his fist into a building with enough force it tore the entire structure down. "I'm not strong enough," he said as he rubbed the tiredness out of his eyes. "I can't fail again, I have to save every." It hit him like a full-powered punch from All Might. Eri was alive and she's living a life of hell right now because of overhaul. OFA activated and the lightning became darker as more and more radiated off of him, making the ground beneath him break. He can still remember everything she said overhaul did to her. Cutting her, dissecting her, using his quirk to tear her arms off, killing her to get more biomass, then bringing her back to just redo it all over again. Another crack formed on the ground as Izuku gritted his teeth, and for the first time since he was sent back in time his eyes filled with life, except it was nothing but pure rage. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it, damn it, damn it. He started to destroy everything in his path. God damn it, I'm not strong enough. I can't even save her because of how weak I am. He started punching a building near him, and each punch destroyed the part that was hit every single time, and sometimes the wall behind it or even multiple walls as his anger grew. All the happy memories of her came flooding back, and his rage just kept boiling over the more and more he thought about her getting hurt by that sick man. God damn it. Izuku threw a punch which broke his arm, and it destroyed over 5 blocks of the training ground in his anger. He started to take deep, slow breaths to try and calm himself down. I have to get stronger. I promise Eri I'll come and save once I am strong enough to do so. Izuku then looked at his broken arm and sighed. He now has to go to Recovery Girl to get it healed, which he really didn't want to, but he had no choice. After a quick walk he arrived at her office and entered the room. I need you to heal my arm so I can get back to training. Sonny, what's been going on with you? Your mom has been calling us for the past 5 days asking how you are since you refused to go home, said Recovery as she checked his arm. I can't face my mom. Or anyone for that matter, so just finish healing my arm so I can get back to training. No, I have to get stronger, said Izuku. I'll heal you, but you were requested to 𝗍𝗂's office. Aizawa and All Might are very worried about you, but 𝗍𝗂 has stopped them from interfering with you, said Recovery Girl. He simply sighed and nodded his head before he looked at his now healed arm and walked off to 𝗍𝗂's office to see what he wanted. When he entered it he saw a fully healed Aizawa, All Might in his buff form, 𝗍𝗂 and Hound Dog. You called for me, 𝗍𝗂, said Izuku walking towards him before he sat down. Yes, I did. Midoriya, Aizawa and All Might here have been worried, and I believe you've spent enough time venting and now you can tell them what's going and how you got here, said 𝗍𝗂. Wait, what do you mean how I got here? Said Izuku, confused and slightly concerned. Midoriya, I'm aware of what's been bothering you and why you're like this, but it's not my place to tell them, so I want you to tell them why you're like this and why you look so cold now, said 𝗍𝗂. Young Midoriya, please tell us what's wrong, said All Might looking at his successor with concern in his eyes. Even if I was to tell you, none of you would believe me and you would all simply think I'm going crazy, he simply said while looking down and playing with his hands. You telling them will do that, but if you show them, then that'd be a different story, said 𝗍𝗂 with a smile. What do you mean? And how? Do you really know what I went through? Yes, I do, but like I said, it isn't my place to say. Since it's your business to tell and to show them, well, I'll let my friend show them, said 𝗍𝗂. Just then the door opened and a 7-foot man with the head of an octopus but the body of a man walked in. He wore a black armored costume. Hello, I am Mindwalker, and my quirk Mind Flayer allows me to enter people's minds and make them work for me, or I can read their thoughts and show them to others. Before Mindwalker shows you everything, just know what you will all see will be very unpleasant, said 𝗍𝗂 before he took a sip of tea. The hero walked up to Izuku and looked at the boy, who simply nodded his head showing he'll allow it. He reached down and placed his hand on his head and looked through all his memories, but unaware that certain ones were locked up to prevent him from learning about certain things. After 5 whole minutes, Mindwalker took a step back in shock. This boy before him lived a life of nothing but pure hell. He watched as all of his friends, family and teachers were killed before his eyes, and the person he was fighting took their quirks and used them against him. Then later on he had to kill Aizawa to prevent said villain from stealing his quirk. Then only a year later Izuku was forced to watch as his daughter was killed before his very eyes, leaving nothing but a pile of gore where she was. Then finally Izuku's final battle, when he stopped caring about everything except for killing that monster, and to defeat him he died in the process. He ran over to a trash can and started puking from everything he saw. No human, let alone a teenager, should have even gone through a fraction of that. Why, you poor child, said Mindwalker. He didn't even know how this kid was even sane, let alone not brain dead from all the trauma he went through. I'm not a child. Mentally at least. Also, before you show them. Hound Dog, I'm fine and I don't need therapy, said Izuku looking at the hero/psychologist. I'll be the judge of that, he simply said. You 3 might want to brace yourselves, said Mindwalker as he moved the tentacles on his face that looked like beard over and placed one on each of the heroes. Not even 5 minutes later, Hound Dog himself ran to the trash can while All Might slumped back in the chair, almost releasing his form from shock and horror. Lastly was Aizawa, who actually started to cry as he held his face with his hands. That's the future if we let Shigaraki, Overhaul, and him live. That's why. To prevent that, I'm going to kill them, said Izuku. But Midoriya heroes, shut your mouth, All Might, said All Might before Izuku snapped and screamed at him. It's because we let those 3 pieces of human garbage live that all of that happened. We shouldn't kill them, but looked what happens. I was the one who had to witness it all. I was the one who had to bury what was left of everyone's bodies. I was the one who had to bear the burden. Do you know what it's like to watch everyone you care for die and know it only happened because we let them live? Every time I fought him, I was forced to fight my friend's quirks. Not only that, but he used mental quirks to mess with me and break me. All Might shrank back in the chair as he looked at his successor, the boy with so much happiness and hope. He was now an empty husk because of all the pain and suffering he went through, all because he himself didn't kill All for one. I don't care if the entire world views me as the sum of the earth. Those 3 have to die, All Might, or else hundreds of millions will be lost. Izuku was covered in green lightning as he anger burned, but he was eventually able to calm it down to a manageable level. I have to kill them. It's the only way to ensure that future never happens, All Might. Tell me, are you going to let them live after everything you just saw? All Might looked down. He knew killing was wrong and he absolutely hated doing it, but, like his 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗵𝗃, sometimes killing someone is a necessary evil to protect the innocent. Izuku stood up and started to walk away. I'll be training if you need me. He then walked out the door and left. That boy, said Hound Dog, lifting his head from the trash. I don't know how he's even still going. Because he wants to stop that future from happening. He's on a path of vengeance, and sadly for him, he's broken to the point even the ones he cares for can't really help him because it'll only hurt him more, said Nizu. So what do we? I'm not letting him deal with all of this on his own, said Aizawa. It will take time for him to heal from these wounds, but even then they will never fully heal. What he needs is to clear his mind and to have those he cares for to trying to help him, because eventually they will break through and help him, said Nizu. Also, everything you saw and heard must never leave this room for obvious reasons. The heroes nodded but still couldn't fully stomach the fact that Izuku went through that hell and came back alive physically, but mentally he was almost broken behind repair, and it will take a miracle and lots of help from people who care for him and love him. Izuku was back at the training grounds and he was doing one-armed push-ups, giving his other arm was broken. He's been doing them for the last hour and it felt as if his arm was about to fall off from how tired the muscles are. I have to get stronger. He forced his body to do another push-up before his arm finally gave from strain and lactic acid buildup. Damn it. What? Why am I so weak? A memory flashed through his mind of his 18th birthday, and even though the world was a living hell, Eri made him a small drawing and even tried to make his favorite meal. It was burned and had next to no seasoning, but he didn't care. He ate it regardless because it meant more to him than the flavor. A small smile crossed his face, but just as fast as it was there, it was gone, as another memory came. The day she died. Izuku gritted his teeth to stop himself from crying, and he forced his body up off the ground and he began running, ignoring his already burning lungs along with the previous users telling him to stop. I can't stop. All for one is alive alone with that other monster. I don't care what happens to my body, just as long as it means I can stop those monsters. Including the Hero Safety Commission, thought Izuku. He continued to train and wasn't planning to stop until he was strong enough to save Eri. I have to do this alone. Because I relied on my friends, they all died. I don't care if they end up hating me. I will save them all. Meanwhile, school was just about to start and everyone was in class except Ochako. Since she was waiting for Izuku to show up, she left for school earlier than normal hoping to find him, but she saw him nowhere. She continued to stand outside even after the bell rang, and she started to get worried since he wasn't here, and this was unlike him. Uraraka, what are you doing here? Said Aizawa, walking towards her. Oh, sorry, sensei. I was waiting for Deku-kun so I can ask him if he was okay. I called and texted him over the break and he never responded, said Ochako. Aizawa sighed in understanding from her point of view. She doesn't know the literal hell Izuku went through. Don't worry, Uraraka. I'll try and talk to him later. He's currently dealing with some personal problems. Now get in class and I'll let you not being in it past this time. Ochako nodded her head and went inside, and once the door closed behind her, Aizawa grabbed his head as tears started to stream down his cheeks. Echao. How can you deal with this? He said as he leaned against the wall and slid down till he was sitting. Through the entire week he could barely get any sleep, and any time he closed his eyes all he saw was his entire class dead before him and how they died. It also included how Inko died and how that little girl named Eri died. The way she died made him sick to his stomach. Even after being a hero since he himself went to, nothing could have prepared him for that gruesome sight. It took Aizawa a couple minutes, but he regained his composure and wiped the tears away and stood up. Prob. No, Midoriya. You're truly one of a kind and you deserve to be a hero more than anyone in this school or outside of it. Aizawa walked into class and walked to his desk and was about to begin class when Katsuki spoke up. Oi, where the F is Deku? He snarled. Oh. He's dealing with personal problems, said Aizawa in a cold tone. 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗁, that worthless Deku doesn't have any problems, he's 𝗳. The class looked up at Aizawa and saw that his fist busted a huge hole in his desk, and then he looked up at Katsuki. He didn't have his quirk active, but the look he gave him was more terrifying. But Kogo, you call him Deku one more time and I'll make sure not even Recovery Girl can tell what part of your body belongs where, said Aizawa dangerously. Katsuki made the smart decision and nodded his head, but he did clench his fists. Great, now the teach is defending Deku. First the loser thinks he's better than me, and now he's getting the staff to go against me. Aizawa took a calming breath and decided to get this over with so he can try and talk to Izuku. You all did well in the sports festival, some did better. Because of that most of you got invites to intern under heroes. Those that didn't, we have a list of heroes who have agreed to take any of you in, said Aizawa. Also, to be heroes you will all need hero names. And I will be in charge of those since Eraser right here isn't that good at it and would simply let you choose whatever you want, said Midnight walking into class. Aizawa just grunted and left the class, heading to the training grounds to talk to Izuku. Izuku was standing before a massive 20 by 20 by 20 block of concrete that 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁 made. He walked up to it and took a deep breath of air and placed his hand against it. The ground under his feet cracked and he sent all the force to his hand and it completely shattered the concrete without creating a shockwave. Still not good enough. All for one would just shrug it off, said Izuku before he walked over to another slab of concrete that was 10 by 10 and it was 4 inches thick. He used both his arms to slowly lift up the 4,400 PND slab. After a couple moments he slowly lifted it off the ground and moved his body under it and completely lifted it off the ground and over his head. It took him a moment to get his balance, but once he did he slowly started to walk forward, ignoring the pain in his entire body from the weight and how he was only allowing himself to use 7%. Midoriya, put that down, said Aizawa watching him. No, he said as he continued to walk forward, sweating profusely from the strain on his body. Midoriya, you're gonna end up killing yourself if you keep this up, I understand. He didn't finish what he was saying as Izuku threw the concrete slab away and glared at him with murder in his eyes. Understand? You think you understand what type of hell I went through? I had to watch everyone I care for die before my own eyes. My own mother was decayed before me. All my friends died protecting me because they knew I was the only person who could stop that monster. Not only that, but some of them weren't even killed. I found Yaoyorozu strapped to a machine and being forced to create weapons and other types of things for that sick monster for 2 entire years straight. When I finally saved her, she wasn't even strong enough to live and she died in my arms. Kirishima sacrificed himself to save Ishido and it was for nothing. The Nomu found her and beat her and tore her body to pieces. They raised them high into the air as if they were trophies. Kaken. Shigaraki broke him. He simply broke him. Mentally and physically he was broken, and then he had his quirk stolen along with my other classmates. Uraraka. She was decayed before me and the last thing she told me was that she loved me. To the Neri. Izuku was crying through all of this, but when he got to his adoptive daughter it hurt even more. That sick monster found her on my birthday and he ripped her quirk from her body and then he crushed her skull before me. Then, as a sick joke, he threw her body at me and laughed, saying I couldn't even protect my own daughter. Aizawa flinched. He looked up and saw Izuku empty cold eyes. You saw what I went through. But you can never truly understand the hell I went through. Everyone I knew and loved I had to bury in unmarked graves because he left nothing of their bodies afterwards. To top it all off, he stole most of their quirks and used them against me. So I had to not only fight him, but I had to fight my class. So tell me, Aizawa, do you understand what type of thing hell I've been through? Aizawa said nothing and just looked down. He didn't. He couldn't even begin to fully grasp the hell Izuku went through, even with the memories. Don't ever pretend to understand and leave me alone. I have to train to make myself stronger. I have to kill these monsters so that they don't kill anyone else ever again, said Izuku before he left. I'm sorry, was all that Aizawa said. Meanwhile, in his own office, All Might was still trying to process the literal hell he put his successor went through. It all happened because even in the end I refused to kill him and the government refused to kill him as well, he said. He brought his hands from his face and looked at the small picture he had on his desk of him and Izuku that was taken after he got into Ua. Young Midoriya. I'm so sorry you went through all of this. His eyes then hardened with determination as he stood up. I promise you. This time I won't fail you, young man. He went to leave his office when he heard someone knock on his door. Come in. A moment later 𝗵𝗃𝗃 walked in. Her hair was a mess and she had large bags under her eyes along with tear stains on her cheeks. Mr. Yagi. Oh, Mrs. Midoriya, how can I help you? Said All Might curiously. I want to know why I haven't seen my son in over a week and why he refuses to answer any of my calls or texts, said 𝗵𝗃𝗃 with anger and frustration in her tone. I'm sorry, Mrs. Midoriya, I can't full answer that. Young Midoriya is dealing with something and he's refusing to let anyone near him or help him. That's no excuse why he won't answer me. I'm his mother and I want my baby back home. Yelled 𝗵𝗃𝗃 as her parental instincts were going haywire from worry and exhaustion. I can try and call him here, but I can't promise anything. The only reason he's still here is because Principal Nizu says it's the only thing keeping him sane, said All Might. That confused 𝗵𝗃𝗃, but before she could say anything, All Might grabbed his phone and tried to call Izuku. It rang a couple times and surprisingly he picked up. What? All Might couldn't say anything as the phone was ripped from his hand by 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Izuku, I want you here right this very moment. We are going home and we are going to have a very long talk. Said 𝗵𝗃𝗃. She hated getting angry at Izuku but giving the last week she needed to be. He was silent for a moment before he responded. No. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 actually took a step back at that. His tone was cold and dead that it actually scared her. This wasn't her baby at all. He was so cold and empty. What do you mean no? I'm your 𝗵𝗃𝗃. I know you're my mom, but no, I can't come home. Not until they are dealt with. Anyways, goodbye mom, I need to get back to training. And just like that he hung up the phone. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 stood there for a moment completely frozen, trying to figure out what could have made her baby act like this. And Mr. Yagi. What happened to my baby boy? Said 𝗵𝗃𝗃 in a heartbroken tone, since he's never sounded like this or acted this way before. I can't say. It's up to young Midoriya to say, since it's his burden to share. Mrs. Midoriya, I know you don't like what I'm about to say, but I think it'll be best to let him keep doing what he's doing, said All Might. What, but why? My little boy is hurt emotionally obviously and I need to help him. It's helping him heal, said a new voice. They both looked over and saw Nizu sitting on the spare seat and had a cup of tea in his paws. As messed up as it is, it's the only thing keeping him remotely grounded to earth. But Mrs. Midoriya, I understand that you're worried and you have every right to be, but in this very moment you have to trust me. He needs to be alone. If you are to rush things it will bring more harm than good, said Nizu. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 looked down and let a couple more tears roll down her cheeks before she nodded. Okay. But once this is over I want him straight home. No ifs, ands, or buts. Nizu nodded his head at that. Meanwhile, back at the city, Izuku just got done with his training and a robot came holding a tray with some food and water for him. He grabbed it and began eating away, completely unaware of someone walking towards him. Izuku was eating his lunch and thinking about the order he put in for Mei to make him for his new costume. He then heard stomping and he turned around to see who it was. Before he could fully turn around, he was punched across the face with a crack. After flying a couple feet from the force of the punch, he turned around and looked at who punched him, and it was none other than Katsuki. Deku, what the F is this 𝗧𝗵𝗲? You're skipping school and you leave the sports festival. Do you really think you're that much better? Screamed Katsuki. Izuku looked at him with a cold, unreadable expression and wiped the BLD from his mouth before standing up. I don't have time to deal with you, Kaken. Now leave me alone, I need to get back to training. Katsuki heard this and his BLD was boiling. Who does this little think he is? Marched over and grabbed him. I'm not done talking to you, Deku, so don't ignore me. Izuku ripped his hand off him. Well, I am. I don't have the patience to deal with your superiority and inferiority complex, so leave me alone. He said with a bite in his tone, showing he was being serious. A loud explosion was heard and Izuku barely managed to bring his arms up to block the punch from Katsuki, who just snapped in anger from what Izuku just said. You goddamn D. He screamed as he then swung his leg out trying to kick him. Izuku blocked the attack again and jumped back to gain some distance from him. But before he could say or do anything, Katsuki was on him again, releasing more explosions trying to hit him. Kaken, stop! Yelled Izuku as he dodged another attack. No. You're always looking down on me just because you think you're better than me. Now you think you don't even need to go to school. Not only that, but now the worthless F teachers are taking your side. Yelled Katsuki. Why can't you just get out of my life and do everyone a favor and F die? Izuku gritted his teeth at that and continued to block along with dodging the attacks. I have my own problems and I don't look down on you, so just leave me alone. There you go again, looking down on me. Now just sit still and let me F kill you. An image ran through Izuku's head of Shigaraki, who said something very similar before he killed Inko. Katsuki was about to release another explosion, but Izuku moved faster and slammed his fist right into his gut, making him cough up saliva. I'm tired of you, snarled Izuku as his anger was growing more and more because of Katsuki's attitude and flashes of the past going through his head. He didn't get to say anything as Izuku punched him in the face, then kneed him painfully in his chest before he did a spin kick which hit him hard and sent him flying. Izuku increased the power output to 9% and felt his bones and muscles groan and feel extremely strained, given he isn't used to this level of power. He only recently managed to get up 7%, so jumping up 2% and not letting his body rest at all has put a lot of strain on him. Detroit Smash! Yelled Izuku, punching the air, and a massive air blast was sent out which Katsuki barely dodged. So you're finally 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Izuku kicked him hard and then grabbed him by his shirt collar and slammed him into the ground. I'm sick and tired of you, Bakugo. He screamed and reared his arm back to punch him, but Katsuki moved his head in time just to watch Izuku's fist destroy the concrete under them, and his arm was up to his elbow. An explosion was released on Izuku's chest, blasting him away, but he didn't even flinch and tried to will Black Whip to life but didn't feel it. He then remembered that he hasn't gotten his control good enough yet to access it. This meant he'll have to stick with his old strategy since he only has OFA. You're always beaching and complaining that I'm in your way and looking down on you, and yet whenever I try to leave you alone, you come and seek me out. The world doesn't revolve around you. Screamed Izuku in anger as his repressed emotions were exploding and he was having a very hard time reining them in. Katsuki snarled, That's because you never got out of my life. You followed me around like some demon lost dog. So sit still and F die. Both of them charged and Izuku dropped down to the ground and used his hands to twist his body up, where he gave a kick which smashed into Katsuki's chin with a sickening crack. But the attack wasn't done and Izuku used OFA to push off the ground flying next to him, where he axe kicked him to the ground which broke the concrete. Always talking about death and dying. Have you ever thought of the consequences about talking about that? Yelled Izuku, landing on the ground, watching him slowly stand up. Katsuki looked up at Izuku's eyes and gritted his teeth. He's still looking down on me. He slowly stood up on shaky legs. Why should I give if those demon extras deserve to be in the ground? Boom! Izuku used 20% in an instant and it tore some of the muscles in his legs and right arm from the strain along with cracking the bones as well. How dare you! With bloodshot foggy eyes, Katsuki tried to get up but was then pinned down to the ground by Izuku, who then started to beat his face in. Do you even know the pain people go through when someone dies? Wait, of course you don't. You only care about yourself, screamed Izuku as his fist kept slamming into Katsuki's face. You are nothing more than a bully. You look down on everyone and actively bully and belittle them for just trying. I had to endure your 𝗧𝗵𝗃 for over 10 years, but 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. Izuku's fist was covered in blood from constantly punching Katsuki in the face. Every strike broke the concrete under them and made Katsuki's body jump a little, and below them was a growing puddle of blood. Do you know what it's like to bury everyone you care for and love? A stronger punch than before slammed down and a couple teeth came out. Do you know how it feels having to watch them die before your eyes? The city block then shook from the punch. Do you know what it feels like to watch your own daughter die before your own eyes and you can't even bury her? Izuku was now screaming in both pain and rage as tears streamed down his face and both of his hands were coated in blood along with his breaths and shirt and face. You're nothing more than a villain. He swung his arm back to try and punch him, but someone grabbed his hand. That's enough, young Midoriya. Without even thinking, Izuku turned around and punched All Might in the face with enough force that the hero's jaw cracked and Izuku's hand finally broke. He was about to punch him again when he finally realized who it was he just punched, All Might. He just nodded his head and next to him medical bots came to pick Katsuki up. Izuku's vision fully cleared and he can see everything again and not in a red haze. He looked over to Katsuki and his eyes widened in horror. His face was barely recognizable, his arm was bent at a weird angle, and he had some deep cuts along with bruising all up and down his body. His breathing was also red and under him was a growing pool of blood. The medical bots picked him up and rushed him off to Recovery Girl to heal him. All Might looked at Izuku and saw a multitude of emotions running across his face: anger, sadness, pain, regret, fear, and relief. He looked hurt, but at the same time it seemed as if a weight has also been lifted off his shoulders from this fight. Young Midoriya, what happened? He said. Izuku looked at his blood-soaked hands and forced down all his emotions he was feeling with ease. He grew used to doing this. It was one of the very few things he could do to survive fighting All for One and Shigaraki with everything they did. Bakugo came and aggravated me. He was being himself and continued to try and get me angry. He kept telling me to die and mentioned that others should as well, said Izuku in a very cold tone. All Might was shocked that Izuku would call him Bakugo instead of his usual nickname. He was also angry at Bakugo for his use of language, since talking about death or dying wasn't something most people like to talk about. I don't regret what I did, but I wish I didn't have to be as brutal with him as I was. But sadly it might have been the only way to get him to change. He's the most stubborn person I've ever met, and the only way to get him to see anything or change is to literally beat it into him, said Izuku. But that doesn't matter. I need to get healed, then see if my gear is ready. Izuku then turned and walked away, leaving All Might, who tried to reach out to him but couldn't. He didn't know how to describe it, but he felt if he did anything then Izuku would push him away even more. Midoriya, he thought, watching Izuku leave. What do I do? A couple of days passed after that and everyone came back to school from over the weekend, but when they came back to class they saw that Katsuki was covered in bandages and was uncomfortably quiet. He just kept looking at his desk with an unreadable expression. For a Chako, she looked at him but wondered what happened. Then her eyes went to the empty desk that was Izuku's and had a sad expression. She wanted to help him, but she didn't know what to do since he was pushing everyone away. Just then they heard screaming coming from the halls and it sounded like Aizawa. You are not leaving the school, Midoriya. Everyone walked out class and looked down the hall, seeing Aizawa glaring at Izuku, who was wearing a new costume. The new suit is a near-complete overhaul of Costume Gamma. A new addition to this suit is the mid-gauntlet compression support items, metal bands that cover his entire forearm. The mid-gauntlets were designed to reinforce his whole body, allowing him to go past his allowable limit of 9%, and he can now use 45% of one for all. The final new addition is a yellow cape, which he wears like a shawl around his shoulders. The full effect gave him a more menacing aura. Another thing on him was a large yellow backpack that was filled to the brim with supplies like food, medical equipment, and some water. He also had his hood pulled back and his mouth guard was hidden under his shawl. "I have to leave, Mr. Aizawa. I already got 𝗍𝗂𝗧𝗧 permission, so I have to leave in order to do my mission," said Izuku in a cold tone with lifeless eyes. "You're a student of UA and you're supposed to be here, not out in the world fighting villains," snapped Aizawa. "I already have permission, so this is goodbye, Mr. Aizawa. Take good care of this class and make them great heroes. I'll be the advanced guard and take on the League and Yakuza along with Meta Liberation Army while everyone else gets stronger," said Izuku. He looked towards his class for a brief moment before turning and walking away, heading to the stairs so he can leave UA. As he walked, he didn't get very far before he felt someone grab his hand and was holding it very tightly. He slowly turned around and was looking at Ochako, who had a hurt expression on her face. "Deku-kun, why are you leaving? Why have you been ignoring all of us? This doesn't make any sense. Please tell us, you're our friend," said Ochako. Izuku looked at her for a moment before he closed his eyes. "I'm sorry, Uraraka, but I have to leave. Also, don't worry about me, I'll be fine. Just work on getting stronger and forget about me." Ochako went to say something, but he took his hand from hers and walked away, leaving her hurt. She felt her chest tighten up in pain, and before she realized it, she was crying, seeing him leave and push herself and everyone away. "Aizawa-sensei, what's going on? Why is Midoriya bro leaving?" said Kirishima, looking at him. "He's doing it to protect you all. Now get to class," he said, leaving it at that. On a tall skyscraper overlooking the city, a figure could be seen standing on the ledge of the building. His yellow cape was flowing in the wind as he looked around and spotted a cloud of smoke. "Someone is in danger," he said, and pulled his hood up and put his mask on. He then jumped off the building and used 5% to kick the air and shoot off, heading in that direction of the smoke. He landed on another building and rolled before shooting off into a sprint, and then placed his foot on the ledge, using his momentum along with OFA to gain even more speed and rocket across the city to the smoke. When he did arrive, he saw that a bunch of police officers were fighting a villain with a fire quirk who was shooting off fireballs at the cops. "Haha, you can't beat me. Now give me Endeavor so I can show him what true fire feels like," yelled the villain, shooting off another fireball which hit a cop and lit her entire body on fire, making her scream in pain as the others tried to put it out. Izuku narrowed his eyes and decided to take care of this villain. Off to the side with the cops were a couple of news agents who were recording the fight and commenting on it. As you can see here, a villain has begun attacking the police, demanding that the hero Endeavor appear to fight him. Sadly, no heroes are present in the area, and the police are doing their best to hold him off until they do arrive, said the news reporter before she saw the female officer get hit. An officer was just hit by a fireball and the others are now trying to put the flames out. She was about to comment more when a green figure landed on the ground a couple feet away from the villain and got his attention. "Who the foo dash?" Izuku didn't waste any time and shot forward and punched him in the gut and followed through by smashing him into the building, cracking the wall with the force. The villain was shocked and was about to slump to the ground when the green figure brutally slammed his knee into his gut, lifting his body up, but was then met by a hammer strike to the back which slammed him to the ground unconscious. Izuku looked at the villain before looking at the cops. "He's beaten, now arrest him," he said before shooting off into the city to look for more villains to fight. When he left, everyone was confused since they had no idea who he was, and the cops were angry since he used excessive force on a villain. For Izuku, this continued for the rest of the day. He would run around the city or neighboring cities and look for villains and take them out before he'd run off to look for more. It was now very late at night, well past 1 in the morning, and he finally decided to get some sleep. He found a run-down apartment which was thankfully abandoned, so he found a room at the top and called it his home for the night. After a quick meal, he sat down on the floor against the wall and looked out the window at the full moon with broken eyes. His vision started to get cloudy before his eyes closed, but he opened them and he looked over and saw Eri playing with her toys. "Papa, look at this toy. His name is Mr. Sleepy," she said with a large smile on her face. "Oh, really?" he said. "And why is he named that?" "Because he always sleeps like you do and Uncle Aizawa when you two come home," she said with a smile. Izuku smiled and closed his eyes. Papa, can I ask you a question? Yes, you can, Snowball. Why didn't you save me? Izuku was confused before he turned and his eyes widened in horror. He was now back on the battlefield and what was left of Eri's body and head was looking at him. Why didn't you save me, Papa? You said you'd always protect me. Izuku started to panic and he closed his eyes. I tried. I wasn't fast enough. Why didn't you save me, Papa? I thought you loved me, said Eri. Then another voice was heard and it was from Inko. You were supposed to be a hero, Izuku. You were supposed to protect us, she said as her body decayed from Shigaraki's quirk. Izuku was in the fetal position sobbing and he looked up and saw All for One standing before him with a sickening grin on his face as his red eyes gleamed. This is what happens when you heroes grow families. They all die and you're gonna watch them die again, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗵𝗃. Izuku woke up screaming in the apartment and looked around in absolute fear. His body was caked in cold sweat and he was having problems controlling his breathing. He looked at his phone and realized he only had 2 hours of sleep. It was a dream, he said quietly as he held his head, but the visions were still clear in his imagination. I need to get back to patrolling. With that he packed up his gear and ran out to do some night patrols to hopefully clear his mind of his nightmare. 1 week later. Smash! Yelled Izuku, slamming his fist into a villain, breaking multiple ribs and sending him flying through a wall where he soon rolled on the ground before coming to a stop, unconscious on the ground. He then turned and blocked a strike from a villain before he sent his knee right into his gut with enough force that it made him puke blood before Izuku slammed his elbow into the back of his head, knocking him out. UDMN hero! Screamed another member as he managed to land a wind blast on Izuku, which he countered at the last second with a Detroit smash before it could do any real damage to him. Izuku then moved in and grabbed his arm before twisting it backwards and pinning his head to the ground so hard he cracked his cheek. You're gonna tell me where your human trafficking operation is or else, said Izuku darkly. Haha, you don't scare me. All you heroes do is bruise. He said cockily, watch. You'll beat me up, then I'll be put in jail and some of my buds will get me out by either paying the right people or busting me out. It doesn't matter what you heroes do, your system lets us get away with it in the end. He didn't get a response before he felt unbelievable pain in his shoulder as Izuku snapped the bone out of the socket, breaking with a painful twist. He let out an animalistic scream in pain from his arm being broken, but then he felt his other arm get grabbed and pulled in the same position before the left one broken. You're right. Most heroes are like that, but I'm not. Now tell me where it is or you'll be eating out of straw until you're old and gray, said Izuku, slowly applying pressure to the arm. I'm not a hero. I'm someone who's going to put a stop to monsters like you. The villain groaned in pain as he felt his arm slowly being bent to the point it was going to snap like the other. He felt it crack and he finally caved. Okay, I'll tell you. Just please stop. The pressure was released slightly and it wasn't as painful now, but it still hurt like a beach talk. In a warehouse far outside on the west side of the city. It's near the forest and about a couple 100 yards away from the main road. That's all I know, said the villain. Very well, have a nice fall, said Izuku before he threw him out the window, letting him fall 2 stories and painfully land on the ground with multiple broken bones. Izuku turned to the broken window and walked towards it, seeing the city that was illuminated by all the lights even though it was nighttime. He crouched down and green lightning arched around his body before he shot off into the sky, heading in the direction that man told him. As he jumped he saw that police arrived, probably because of all the screaming from the villains he beat up, drawing attention of passers-by. He landed on a building then jumped again, and as he flew he tried to reach out with Black Whip, but nothing happened as he expected. I still don't have enough control, he muttered to himself. As he continued to race from roof to roof his mind slowly wandered and a picture of Eri popped up in his head of the time she made him a cake on his birthday during the first year of the war against the League. Ochako, Mina and Toru along with Tsu helped her make it since Eri said she wanted to make her papa happy on his birthday. He quickly shook his head to clear his mind of those thoughts before his eyes hardened. I have to get stronger faster. Once I unlock Black Whip I'll be able to save her, since then I won't need her to help me this time. I can already use 45% thanks to these gauntlets, but if they break then I'll be worthless, he thought to himself. After 20 minutes of running from rooftop to rooftop, he finally reached the outskirts of the city and he searched around for a little bit before he came upon the warehouse he was looking for. The gang that controlled it performed human trafficking. Not only that, but they sold people and kids with powerful quirks to someone simply known as the Doctor. Izuku took a deep breath of oxygen to calm himself down before he began to scout the area out to get an idea of what he was up against. He had the element of surprise and he wasn't going to waste it, especially if it means saving the lives inside the building. Quickly jumping up on the roof of the building and heading to the skylight, he peeked down and saw hundreds of cages that were filled to the brim with people of every age. In the back of the room looked to be an operating table with the corpse of a kid laying on it. Anger welled up in him that took him a moment to regain control over. If he let his rage take over, he might hurt the people locked up. With that and one more scan of the room, he had a plan. Quietly as possible, he opened the skylight and landed on one of the support beams that held the roof up before looking around to make sure no one spotted him. Luckily no one did, thanks to someone having loud music playing in the background, which gave him another advantage that Aizawa taught him. He can be slightly more reckless since the music will help drown out the sound of him taking out the thugs. Slowly and quietly he began knocking them out one by one, with strangleholds or smashing their heads into a wall or a support beam to knock them out. It only took him a minute and he had over half of the thugs knocked out and was making his way to where he saw the operating table and offices. But before he could get any closer, the doors to the office opened up and a man walked out that Izuku faintly recognized. He was a tall man with shark-like teeth and was covered in tattoos of a woman in lots of different outfits. He also wore beige-colored breathes and an open shirt that looked like scales. On his face he wore a simple black eye mask. The man was one of the assassins that 𝗵𝘃𝗃 sent after him in the future, that he easily took out. The man was notorious for human trafficking, and the worst part was that he was extremely zealous about it since he viewed 𝗵𝘃𝗃 as a god and he was doing God's work by kidnapping children and other people with strong quirks. "What's taking y'all so long? The doc wanted this shipment hours ago," he said while lighting up a cigarette with his quirk turning on, showing a flame from his fingertip. "Sorry boss, we were taking a break, but we'll get right back to work," said one of them. Izuku saw that the remaining thugs were all in one area, so he had to strike before they could spread out and find the bodies. Green and black lightning arched around his body as he prepared to jump them. The black lightning was something that shocked and confused him until he remembered that 𝗵𝘃𝗃 is partially based off his emotions and giving everything he's been through and 𝗵's current state. The black bolts of electricity show the darkness in him. Before the villains even knew what was happening, a figure slammed into one of them, smashing his head straight into the ground. He then spun his body before using his arms to lift himself up and slam the metal sole of his shoe straight into another villain's chin with a sickening crack, breaking his jaw. Izuku then used the momentum on his kick and shoved his body up in the air before he did two quick Delaware smashes, sending the others away before he landed on the ground. Not even waiting a second, the moment his feet touched the ground, Izuku shot off and punched another villain before bending his body down to dodge a blade from another one. As he ducked, he spun his body and using his right foot, it connected to the head of the assailant and it made a sickening crack as he went flying before landing on the ground, twitching from the force sent to his brain. A flam WHP came from the corner of Izuku's eye and quickly blitzed to the side, only getting nicked by the flames. Once he had some distance, he quickly raised his arm and shot out a Montana smash. The air blast was extremely small, no bigger than a baseball, but once it hit its target, it exploded and sent him through the office of the building. Just then a baseball bat smashed into his back and he bit his lip in pain, but overall, ignored it. He quickly turned around and punched the villain in the stomach with enough force to knock him out immediately. Izuku looked over at the last three villains, with one of them being the man he was after. "Who the F are you?" he snarled while clenching his shark-like teeth in anger as a flame WHP appeared in his hand. "Someone who's gonna put a stop to your 𝗵𝘃𝗃, said Izuku darkly. How dare you? He's a god among men. And you think you can kill him?" he screamed in rage. "It's not that I think, it's that I know I will kill him," said Izuku. He's never felt so angry before in his life. This man before him was insulting his god. A man who chose him to carry out this important task of giving the doctor powerful quirks. "I need you to gather me children or other people with powerful quirks for me. You are the only one I can trust with this important task," said 𝗵𝗃𝗏 with a small grin on his face. The 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗃 lashed out to Izuku, who narrowly dodged the strike before he jumped away, landing on an empty cage and then gripping it tightly with his hand, digging into the metal. He flipped forward and hurled the cage out, but it was easily cut in half by the 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗃 as if it were a hot knife through butter. Izuku was about to jump again when a different villain raised his arm and his fingers turned into barrels for his gun quirk. Izuku couldn't move because if he did, then the hostages behind him would get hit. Because of that, he couldn't move and had to lift his arms up to let the gauntlets hopefully absorb most of the punishment. They thankfully did, but some bullets still hit home and hit his legs, stomach, and one grazed his head. The pain was excruciating, but he pushed through it with gritted teeth and shot forward, dodging more bullets and the flame with a mixture of ease and pain from the wounds he has. Once close enough, he dropped his body to the ground to dodge a slash from the 𝗵𝗃𝗏 before placing his hands on the ground and swung his body up and did a double uppercut with both his feet, knocking out the guards. Izuku turned and was met with white-hot flames wrapping around him and beginning to burn his body badly. Through sheer gritted teeth and rage, he sent 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗏 to his legs and shot forward again before he slammed his forehead against it. 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗃, he screamed, creating more WHPS, and kept hitting Izuku with more ferocious ferocity, hoping to kill him and hopefully get praised by 𝗵𝗃𝗏 for this achievement. Izuku himself was getting more and more angry and ripped the flames apart before punching him again, but was slashed again by the flames, making him fall to the ground holding his chest in pain from the attack. "How dare you? Because of you I'll have to move and my 𝗵𝗃𝗏 won't be pleased," he snarled before picking Izuku up by his neck and activating his flames, starting to burn his neck. "You'll die right here and now." Stars were starting to form in his vision from lack of air and pain he was in. It also started to fade to black. As the pain increased, he panicked, and before realizing it, an audible snap was heard and the pain stopped. Air quickly filled his lungs as he felt the villain's grip finally be released, along with the pain of the flames burning his neck. He did wince feeling the burned flesh, though it thankfully didn't feel like second or third degree, given he was trying to make him suffer. He slowly looked over to where the villain, and he realized what he did. He snapped his neck out of pure reflex to try and escape from him. Damn it," he said as he looked at his hands, remembering all of the other villains he killed before. He hated killing, but after so long in war against 𝗵𝗃𝗏 and Shigaraki, he understood it was a necessary evil. "I need to call the cops so they can save all these people and get them home." 20 minutes later, 𝗬𝗁𝗁 arrived at the warehouse where they were giving an anonymous tip from someone who sounded a lot like Izuku. He walked past the police tape and into the warehouse, where he saw lots of people ranging from 4 to 80 years old that were in hundreds of small cages that could barely fit one person, but two were shoved in it. As he walked, he saw unconscious villains laying on ground while some looked to have broken bones, but the one thing that really concerned him was when he arrived where most of the officers were. They just put a blanket over a body of a villain who had his neck snapped. He really didn't know how to feel about this. All Might told him that Izuku left to go and fight villains, but this. He won't be able to protect him with this now. 𝗬𝗁𝗁, good to see you here, said the police chief walking towards him. He was a tall man with the head of a dog, and he was extremely notorious with following the rules and laws regardless of the reason why they might have been broken. A couple years ago he had a hero arrested and his license taken away because he crippled a known 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗏 who touched her son. "Likewise," he said automatically, "so why did you call me and Aizawa here?" he asked, gesturing to said man who was talking to some of the other officers. The person who killed this man, along with crippling a bunch of other people for the last week and also breaking bones of lots of thugs and villains, came from his school. This vigilante is a menace to society and I won't tolerate it. I want his name and to know everything about him so we can build up more information on him for other heroes and police to arrest him, said the police chief. "Sir, I'm sure there is a reason 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗃. I don't care for a reason. The second he started to fight without a license and he broke bones, crippled some and killed this man, he lost all rights and shall be seen as nothing more than a criminal, so I want all the information you and Aizawa along with UA has on him, or you'll all he arrested for helping a villain," the chief said, cutting off 𝗬𝗁𝗁 before he walked away. Meanwhile, with Aizawa, he found the security cameras and he watched the whole thing and sighed, "Problem child. You shouldn't be doing this." Tomorrow. Ochako finished with a shower at Gunhead's agency when she saw her phone exploding with messages from her friends. She raised an eyebrow and lifted up the flip phone to see messages from friends, all saying the same thing. Mina, look at the news now. Momo, 𝗬𝗃𝗁𝗃𝗏. Need to check out the news, but just know we are here if you need to talk. Sue, Ochako-chan, please don't do anything crazy but check the news, and know that I'm here if you need to talk. Toru, are you okay? I know you and Midori were really close, though I think it's 'cause he's nice and cute. Ochako was starting to get concerned reading these, but the last one made her blush. She then walked over and turned on the TV to the news, and her eyes went wide. In local news, the new vigilante that's been causing heroes and police problems for the last week has finally been identified as Izuku Midoriya, or as some of the people he's rescued, Deku. Last night around 1 a.m., he beat up a bunch of thugs, then left heading to a warehouse outside of Hosu where he beat up and crippled a bunch of human traffickers. Not only that, but he killed one of the villains in the warehouse last night, said the news reporter before she cleared her throat again to continue. Because of this, we are charging Izuku Midoriya for murder, and if you have any information on him, please contact the police to help them with arresting this villain. Now with today's news, it's going to be a dash. Ochako tooled out what the lady was saying, and she simply looked down before out the window and held a hand up to her chest. Deku, what happened to you? She asked herself, looking out at the city. Uraraka, you ready for your first patrol? Said Gunhead outside the door. Why ya? Just have to throw on my costume, she said. Okay, you got 3 minutes or you'll have to do extra push-ups when we get back, said Gunhead as he walked away. She began to put her costume on, but she just couldn't stop thinking about why Izuku would cripple villains, let alone kill one. Deku, I promise to help you next time we meet. I won't let you throw your life away like this. We were supposed to be heroes, she said with determination in her voice as she got dressed. All of her other classmates felt horrible or horrified finding out that Midoriya would do something like this, and it made them wonder one thing. What happened to Izuku to make him like this? Izuku was in an abandoned apartment and he just finished sewing his wounds along with putting on burn cream on his neck and arms along with chest. He then looked at his damaged costume and sighed before grabbing it and tossing it to the side and stood up, walking to his backpack. He opened the bag and pulled out some ration bars that were made years ago. They were the size of your hand and packed full of nutrients and were surprisingly filling, given he's been living on these and any time he allows himself to actually get himself an okay meal. He ripped the packaging off and began munching on it while looking at the new scars covering his body from all his fights in the last week. Lots of cuts, bruises and burns along his entire body, also some crappy stitching he had to teach himself back in the war while on the field. He continued to eat while looking out the window. He closed his eyes for a moment to sigh, but when he opened them again, he was pulled into his mindscape. His body was covered in the black inky substance, but unlike before during his first time here, his mouth was free so he can talk. Ninth, I believe it's time we talk, said a voice he was all too familiar with. Izuku turned around and saw all the previous users except for the second and third were sitting in their seats looking at him. The other two were leaning against the wall staring at him with a look he was all too familiar with. Pity. We don't have anything to talk about, said Izuku, getting to the point. I'm doing our job and I'm sure you all digged through my memories, so you already know my life. He looked at each of them and their faces said it all. They did. Lend me your quirks, then I can end the pain and suffering that all for one has caused us all. Midoriya, we understand W-, said Nana, but was cut off by the glare he gave her. No you don't. The closest people who do are the first 3 users that know the pain and suffering I went through. Besides, you all saw my life, so you know I won't stop. If I didn't let my friends get close to me again and I dropped my guard, then maybe we could have defeated him. Yet because I did, most of them were killed and had their quirks stolen and used against me, or they were turned into Nomu, then I had to kill them myself to put them out of their misery, said Izuku coldly. I'm doing what all 8 of you failed to do. I'm going to put a stop to it no matter what. And what about your friends and family? Said Banjo, looking at Izuku. They care for you and will try and save you. I won't let them. I'll stop them and make them fear and hate me so they'll abandon me. I won't let them get close to me again, just for me to watch them die all over again. The whole world can hate me for all I care. As long as I kill them and my friends and family are safe and alive, I'll live with it. I lost them once and I won't lose them again, said Izuku. Then what about the ones you loved? Remember we saw your memories and we knew you were with people to help alleviate some of the pain. Said in. I'll push them back the most. You know what 𝗷𝗺𝗏 did to them. I had to kill them to stop them from suffering any more pain, said Izuku. Nana looked away, remembering those memories the most. The amount of pain she felt watching those made her break down into tears for just how much suffering Izuku has gone through in 𝗷𝗺𝗏's attempts to finally break a OFA user. Now it's my turn to ask you, why won't you let me use your quirks? Said Izuku, staring at them coldly. Remember, you said it yourself, your body isn't physically ready, even with those gauntlets you own. Using any of our quirks before your body can naturally handle 20% would be suicide and do more harm than good, said the first. I see, he said as he was about to turn, but was stopped. Wait, I have a question for you. Why didn't you tell Aizawa to arrest Aoyama? He's the traitor, said the fifth. Because, as messed up as this is gonna sound, I need him to bring the League to the summer training camp so I can take most of them all out at once, said Izuku. If I didn't then, they would cause more pain and suffering overall. That's heartless, said Nana, looking at him. I'm aware, but it's the best strategy to take out or kill some of them in a single night when they are all together, said Izuku. They didn't say anything else after that. Very well, now since that's all, I'll be leaving, said Izuku as he turned and walked away. Don't talk to me unless it's to let me use your quirk. I don't need you ghosts trying to stop me and going back this time. With that he disappeared. The users were silent before the first placed his elbows on his knees and had his face in his hands. The burden they placed on Izuku has already killed him in a sense. He is so damaged he is pushing everyone away and will make himself look like a monster to protect all those he cares for and loves. But why did everything have to go bad during that battle? Or if only I was strong enough. Then he wouldn't be so hurt, said Nana as she began to cry. We can't change the past. All we can do is help Midoriya to fix his past mistakes since he somehow got a second chance. We have to support him or he'll truly break, said the second user. The other users reluctantly nodded in agreement before Banjo stood up. I'll give him my quirk first like we saw in his memories. He needs to save that girl named Eri. It's eating him alive knowing she's suffering because he's not strong enough. Right now to kill 𝗷𝗺𝗏. They all watched him disappear into darkness in the same direction Izuku went off to. The first gripped his hands so tightly that if he was alive, they would be bleeding. Brother. You will pay for what you did to this boy, he said quietly to himself. All Might looked down and a tear rolled down his cheek as he hated himself even more. Izuku was suffering because he couldn't kill 𝗷𝗺𝗏. For Izuku he opened his eyes and saw that he was back in the abandoned apartment and he sighed before walking over to the spot of the floor where he was going to sleep, but his body tensed as he heard talking somewhere else in the building. Ugh, I'm hungry. When can we get some food? Said a female voice in clear annoyance. Not yet. We have to make sure the cops didn't see us. Once I'm sure they didn't, then we can get food, said a deadpan annoyed male voice. Izuku recognized both of those voices. They were from Himiko Toga and 𝗬𝗏𝗍, or known as Toya Todoroki. These two were a mixed bag for Izuku, giving that yes, they were villains, but after he found out why they became villains and the fact that 𝗷𝗺𝗏 was the one that ruined both of their lives. For Himiko he found out about her quirk and saw just how useful it'd be to have her as his puppet, so he had the doctor lie to her parents and tell them lies about her and not to mention the BLD banks to help people with BLD-related quirks. Thanks to this her parents both feared and hated her, and after so many years, Himiko finally snapped from never getting BLD and 𝗷𝗺𝗏 pulling the strings on her life, making her a villain. For 𝗬𝗏𝗍, 𝗷𝗺𝗏 wanted to break Endeavor, so he paid all the right people to constantly talk about how All Might is stronger than Endeavor and how Hawks or other heroes will surpass Endeavor. He also paid off the news to constantly talk about this subject around the times that said hero would be at home, and the results spoke for themselves. Endeavor's inferiority complex made him lash out at his family and try and have a child with a better quirk while neglecting and hating his family for not giving him what he now wanted. After Izuku learned this straight from 𝗷𝗺𝗏's mouth, it all but made him hate the man even more than he already did. What hurt the most was that Himiko was present when he said that, and she, like so many others, sacrificed herself so he can put an end to 𝗷𝗺𝗏. But before she did, she looked at him and apologized for all the pain she caused. Izuku let out a sigh and thought it over. While both Himiko and 𝗬𝗏𝗍 did indeed commit crimes before they joined the League, They only did it because All for One pulled all the strings to make them villains. Maybe I can do the right thing and at least try and save them or at least give them a chance, he thought to himself before grabbing his costume shirt and putting it on along with his mask and hood before he quietly headed downstairs to where he heard them. Meanwhile, a floor below him, both 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and 𝗣𝗵𝗃 were sitting in the same room. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was playing with a knife while 𝗣𝗵𝗃 was just resting and thinking on how he was going to kill his father for everything he did to him. They both didn't get to enjoy the peace and quiet for long when a dark figure covered in green lightning shot through the door and quickly shot towards 𝗣𝗵𝗃 and smashed his knee into his chin, knocking him out. Before he even hit the ground, the figure kicked off 𝗣𝗵𝗃's chest and grabbed 𝗵𝗃𝗃 before pinning her to the ground and chopping her neck, knocking her out. I need to be faster. I used to be able to do this under 4 seconds, he said quietly to himself before he picked up both of them and walked away, heading to a different room. 𝗣𝗵𝗃 slowly opened his eyes and he quickly realized that he was tied to a chair. He had to stifle a chuckle since he could easily burn his way out. But when he tried to, he didn't feel his quirk, which shocked him. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, so don't bother trying, said a dark figure hidden in the room. 𝗣𝗵𝗃 looked up and could barely make out the figure in the shadows, though he could see his green eyes that were glowing in the dark, which made it very creepy and nerve-wracking. He was pulled out of his thoughts when 𝗵𝗃𝗃 groaned. 𝗬𝗏 slowly opened her eyes before realizing she was restrained and began to start to panic. I'm not going to hurt either of you. Instead, I'm going to give both of you a chance, said Izuku. A chance for what? Said 𝗣𝗵𝗃, trying to stay calm while trying desperately to activate his quirk, but to no avail. To change your lives for the better and to not follow the path that an evil man put both of you on, said Izuku. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, what the hell are you talking about? Growled 𝗣𝗵𝗃, my life is my own and I make my own decisions. 𝗣𝗵𝗃, age 23, birthday January 18th, quirk cremation, which allows you to make flames over 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit, but your body can't handle it since it was meant to handle cold temperatures, which makes you start to burn yourself every time you use it longer than a couple seconds. Your real name is Toya Todoroki, the firstborn child of Enji Todoroki and Rei Todoroki, said Izuku. 𝗣𝗵𝗃 froze hearing that. He didn't even know what to do and he began to feel fear enter his body as a cold chill went down his spine. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, age 16, birthday August 7th, quirk transform, allows you to drink someone's BLD and transform into the person depending on how much BLD you've consumed. After your quirk manifested, your family started to hate you and treat you like a monster and forced you to never drink BLD, which 10 years later caused you to have a mental breakdown and attack someone and drink his BLD before you ran away and knocked people out to drink their BLD, said Izuku. Now 𝗵𝗃𝗃 looked shocked and stared at him wide-eyed. How do you know that? She said, scared that he knows things that no one else except 𝗣𝗵𝗃 knows. I know lots of things, and maybe if we can come to a deal and I can help you two on the right path, I'll tell you one day, but till then it's my secret, said Izuku. What do you mean right path? I ain't becoming a hero, snarled 𝗣𝗵𝗃. Is that because your father said you couldn't or because you've decided not to be one, said Izuku. 𝗣𝗵𝗃 became silent at that comment. I'm no hero either. I mean, just yesterday I crippled a couple villains and killed one for human trafficking. I've given up my dream to be a hero to be something else, said Izuku. And what's that? Said 𝗵𝗃𝗃, slightly intrigued while having a slight blush on her face, since if he was who she thought he was very cute in her eyes. I'm nothing, just someone who's working to protect people from the true monsters that ruined our lives and society, said Izuku as he finally stepped out of the shadows and was now clearly visible to both of them. I will plunge myself into darkness to protect everyone I care for. I don't care if the whole world views me as a monster, just as long as they get to live. That's all that matters to me anymore. You have hero qualities. Yet you're willing to act like a villain. You're not like every other hero out in the world, said 𝗣𝗵𝗃. Not all heroes are bad. Yes, some may exist that only care for money, yet the point is that they still protect people from villains, said Izuku. Is it right? No, but we humans aren't perfect. I mean, lots of heroes only care for the paycheck but they still protect us. But on the same coin, we have wolves in sheep's clothing, heroes who use their prestige or rank to do lots of unspeakable things or get away with things. Captain Celebrity is a perfect example of that. Then what are you suggesting we do? Said 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Just be better people or protect innocent people from the shadows. It's not too late to prove all the naysayers wrong, said Izuku. You said you'll sink yourself into darkness to protect everyone. But what's your real goal? Said 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃. To kill and stop certain people to protect everyone I care for and to make it so no one ever has to live through what I did or you two did, said Izuku. Why do you want to kill them? I thought you were about to tell us that killing was wrong, said 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃. That's a mixed bag. Some people out in the world deserve to be put 6 feet under, while others should be thrown in a prison and the key be tossed and forgotten, said Izuku. I have a couple of people who I will kill no matter what. They are too evil to let live and don't deserve a second chance or even time to repent. Both of them were shocked, but they could somehow understand what he meant. Some people deserve to be killed because they are simply too evil. If we did agree, what would we do? Said 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃. I'll simply let you go so you two can try and have a better life, said Izuku. I'm not going to drag you into my war. You two have suffered enough. Both of them looked at each other for a moment before they nodded. We'll follow you instead. Izuku looked at them confused. Why? You two have an opportunity to leave this life forever and simply live out in decent comfort. So why would you decide to stay with a person who's declared a one-man war against villains and the people who ruined thousands of lives? You've convinced me, said 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃. Our society is broken and it needs to be fixed. And I want to fix it, and like you said earlier, I won't be someone's puppet, I make my own decisions. Same here, said 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃. I don't want anyone else to live my life. Izuku looked into their eyes as they spoke and saw nothing but complete and brutal honesty. Very well, and don't betray my trust or you'll regret it, said Izuku as he undid the bindings on both of them, releasing them. I have food over there if you're hungry along with water. Choose whatever room you want, I'm going to bed. They watched as Izuku walked away and they both dug in and began to eat the bars and drink water with gusto. What do you think we'll be doing now, 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃? Said 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃 as she took another bite of her food. He looked at her and sighed as he thought it over. I'm not sure. But he does know a lot about us. We should stick with him and also see how he knows so much. She nodded her head before going back to her food. Meanwhile, Izuku arrived back in his room and sat down on the floor getting ready for sleep. I hope I made the right choice. Just gotta make sure I don't let them get close to me. Also, I'll have to get ready for tomorrow. Iida will be trying to kill 𝗬𝗏. With that, his eyes slowly closed and he silently hoped he'll be able to get more than 2 or 3 hours of sleep for once. Inko was sitting in what was left of Izuku's room, looking at a picture of her and him when he was just a baby. He was such a cute kid and had such a bright future ahead for him. The new vigilante Izuku Midoriya, or better known as Deku, is wanted for acts of vigilantism, breaking and entering, first-degree murder and crippling a couple of people. If you have any information, we recommend you report it to the police to help with the investigation. If you do have information on him and do not give it to the police, then you shall be tried and arrested for obstructing a police and hero investigation. Not only that, but we have been informed that Deku also attacked and ended up crippling the hero Captain Celebrity, though the police seem to be covering up the reason why. Also, in recent news, 3 villains were found in an alley where 2 of them were embedded into a wall, while the last was laying on the ground with a broken spine. It is believed this is from the vigilante 𝗳𝗏. The TV was turned off by Inko as she looked down. The news was all but gobbling up this story and making Izuku sound like a monster. A couple of tears rolled down her cheek as she looked around his empty room. After it was revealed that it was Izuku, the police came to her home and took all of his stuff for evidence, and now wherever she goes, she needs to have an officer watch over her in case Izuku comes back. They took every single photo of him, and the only one she was able to keep was her photo album, thanks to a police detective and Izuku's teacher strong-arming in to let her keep it. Oh Izuku, what happened to my baby boy? She said, tracing her hand over the picture of him on his 5th birthday. She then laid on his bed and began to cry, wondering what could have made her baby be like this and if it was her fault since she wasn't a good mother. Far away near Hosu in a run-down, abandoned apartment, 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃 woke up with a stretch as she looked around her room where she had some clothes and a mattress. Grumbling about it not being cute enough, she got out of her bed and walked to the kitchen where, thankfully, the water and oven still worked, though that was thanks to Izuku turning them on. She went to the stove and began to boil some water in the tea kettle when her eyes spotted the other person in the room. It was Izuku, who just came back from a 17-hour patrol. then training for 4 hours straight and only fell asleep maybe 2 hours ago. He was sleeping on the hard floor since he said he isn't used to soft beds. He's used to hard floors and either laying on them or sitting upright against a wall. He was a strange person, since the news said he was a UA student who just suddenly turned into a vigilante for no reason. He had, from what little he said, a good home life, so it didn't make sense why he was so cold and dark and why with some villains he didn't hesitate in killing them. It was something herself and 𝗬𝗵𝗃 found to be very confusing and interesting given that, also for how it seemed he was targeting certain villains in his patrols. She sighed and went back to the pot and started to make some instant ramen for all of them before she could even open up the package. Izuku woke up and stood up with massive bags under his eyes. 2 hours, that's good enough, he said, standing up and heading to the kitchen area to grab something to put in his stomach. He grabbed a bottle of water and a sandwich which 𝗵𝗃𝗃 made before he left to go back on patrol. Wait, Izuku, where are you going? She said, hoping he'd spend time with her and 𝗬𝗵𝗃. Patrolling, he said as he opened the door. I might contact you and 𝗬𝗵𝗃 later for something. He then left through the door. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 looked down and sighed. She wished he wouldn't work himself half to death every day. Outside of the building, Izuku looked down at his phone that showed the date and he remembered what day this was. It was the battle for Hosu where 𝗬𝗏 will try to kill Iida and Shigaraki will have his Nomu destroy the city. I need to try and kill Shigaraki. But the problem is that I also have to save Iida and 𝗏𝗏 along with stopping as many Nomu as I can to save lives. He said, standing up looking out towards the city where the sun was just rising. He jumped off the building and began his patrol. Far away from Izuku's patrol in a bar, 3 figures could be seen, with one of them laying in the ground, while a different one was laying against the bar. The third and final figure had the first one pinned to the ground with 2 knives. One was pinned next to his head, while the other was slammed into his shoulder. You're nothing more than a child throwing a temper tantrum. You have no true goals or conviction, said 𝗬𝗏 in absolute disgust. Give me a reason why I shouldn't purge you right now. You're just a fake. I hate you like the others. I just want to destroy this society as everything it stands for, especially All Might. It's all his fault, said Shigaraki. 𝗬𝗏 glared at him. Then it seems I should kill you, he said as he pulled the pinned blade from the floor and went to stab him, but Shigaraki quickly grabbed the blade and it immediately turned to rust and became a small pile on the ground. I'd ask you to not kill him, said a voice from the TV. All the hairs on 𝗬𝗏's body stood up and he felt as if a cold hand just grabbed his spine. In a flash he jumped backwards and had his hand on his sword as he stared at the static screen of the TV. That voice was so calm and friendly, but it felt as if death itself was speaking to him. Who are you? He said, glaring at the TV. I'm simply someone who wishes to fill out Shigaraki's dream. That's all, said the voice from the TV. 𝗬𝗏 felt very at edge, but he relented and stopped his quirk's control on both Shigaraki and 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 before he spoke. Send me back, I want to finish my hunt in Hosu. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 opened a portal and 𝗬𝗏 left without saying a word. I want to kill him, seethed Shigaraki. Patience, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, we can use this to our advantage, said the TV. How so, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃? That's quite simple. We make it seem that 𝗬𝗏 is part of our cause. With that we can recruit more followers for our cause, said the TV. Also, I'm quite interested in something. What's that, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃? Said Shigaraki, confused. This new vigilante named Deku. He's All Might's successor and yet he's so dark and is willing to kill people. I had Garaki find out more about him and nothing during his life shows why he'd be like this, said the TV. It might be possible to turn him to our side with his given darkness. But 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, I want to kill him, snapped Shigaraki. If he proves useless to us then you will be allowed to kill him, but if he does prove to be useful then imagine how entertaining it'd be to have All Might be killed by his own successor, said the TV with a dark chuckle at the end. Shigaraki smiled evilly at that. I now understand 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. But first I want some Nomu to go and destroy Hosu. The TV was silent for a little bit before it spoke. Very well, I'll have Garaki get you 4 Nomu for this. Thank you 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, he said before he walked away to get ready for the massacre tonight. Meanwhile, in a dark underground base, the man speaking through the TV turned it off and leaned back with his hand propping his chin up. Izuku Midoriya, huh? I wonder what made you this way, along with if I'll be able to turn you to my side, after all. One for all is my quirk, said All for One with a sickening grin forming on his face, and it looked as if his eyeless sockets had a red glow for his eyes. It was almost night now, and 3 figures were standing on a rooftop together. One of them was Deku, while the other 2 are his new partners as they call themselves. 𝗬𝗵𝗃 looked out towards the city and took a long drag from a cigarette he was holding. So what are we doing? Waiting, said Deku as he waited for the chaos to unfold. Well, while we are waiting, what do you want us to do? Said 𝗵𝗃𝗃, looking excited to finally do something. Deku was silent for a moment before he spoke. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, I want you to use a syringe or something to get BLD samples of the Nomu creatures that attack. After that, 𝗬𝗵𝗃 will kill them quickly and painlessly as possible. Nomu? What are those? Said 𝗬𝗵𝗃. Creatures that shouldn't even exist, said Deku. Welp, you're the boss and you pay me, so sure, said 𝗬𝗵𝗃. Deku looked at him with a blank expression even with his mask. I don't pay you, you just decided to follow me. It's the thought that counts, said 𝗵𝗃𝗃, joining in. Why didn't I just tell them no and forget they ever saw me, thought Deku. Just then a massive explosion ripped through the night sky as flames and smoke started to fill the air along with the screams of civilians. Remember your jobs, get BLD samples and kill the Nomu, while also making sure they don't kill any civilians, said Deku, standing up. And what will you do? Said 𝗬𝗵𝗃. I'm going to clean up a stain, he said before green lightning arched around him and he shot off into the night sky. He's so hot, said 𝗵𝗃𝗃 with a dreamy look in her eyes. You're just saying that since he feeds you BLD, said 𝗬𝗵𝗃. Not just that, but also because he is really cute, she said, giggling. Good luck, Deku, you're gonna need it, thought 𝗬𝗵𝗃 as he jumped down and started to head towards the chaos with 𝗵𝗃𝗃 following close behind. Over with Deku, he was soaring through the city heading towards where Stain was, but as he was doing this he looked around and saw the chaos that was unfolding here. It made his BLD boil seeing all this chaos unfold because of Shigaraki and All for One wanting to rule Japan and the world, no matter the cost. He was pulled out of his thoughts when he saw a winged Nomu heading towards him. It let out a screech and began to fly even faster, seeing Deku. Deku kicked off the roof towards the Nomu. He saw it dive to him with its clawed legs outstretched to grab him. Deku kicked the air and flew higher, being right above the Nomu, and he then used a move that 𝗵𝗃𝗃 taught him during the short time they dated, before Shigaraki killed her. He tucked his arms into his chest and twisted his whole body to his hips to get as much torque as possible. When he did, he cranked the power up to 30% for a mere moment and launched his leg at the Nomu 𝗂𝗂𝗃 crescent. His foot smashed straight into its neck, and the sheer amount of force from the kick ripped its head right off its body in a mere instant. The body of the Nomu fell to the ground with a loud thud and laid motionless, given Deku killed it in a mere moment. Another large explosion went off in the distance, and Deku quickly shot off heading towards that direction, to save Iida and Native from Stain. UDMN villain, yelled Iida, glaring murder at Stain as the villain gave him a impassive glare. That's not the look of a hero, you're just another fake, he said as he walked towards him and brought his sword up to get ready to kill him. Native watched this and hoped that maybe if the teen was killed, he might live. Because of that he tried to move his body to escape, but he still couldn't move a single inch. Stain's eyes snapped to him and Native froze under his glare. You fake heroes truly are disgusting. I could tell you were trying to escape the moment I tried to kill this fake hero. Because of that I'm going to make sure your death is even more painful. His eyes then went back to Iida and he raised his sword up high. This is for a just society. His sword came down, but Stain was met with a metal sole of a shoe right to the face, which sent him flying backwards and slamming into a dumpster before he fell to the ground and painfully stood up. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, said Iida, shocked at seeing him. Once you can move, he said, not taking his eyes off of Stain. No. He's mine to kill, screamed Iida. He crippled my baby. He was cut off when Izuku kicked him across the face, shocking Native, but intriguing Stain. I don't care, you're not a hero, Iida, you're just a man throwing a hissy fit. You don't have what it takes to do what is necessary and you're fighting for nothing but revenge. You're no hero and your brother would be disappointed in you, said Deku coldly as he turned around to look at Stain. I know you. You're Deku, the new vigilante and the man that Shigaraki is hell-bent on killing you, he said. So tell me Deku, what is your goal? Why did you throw away your life and left UA to become a vigilante that is even willing to kill? I'm doing this to protect everyone and to not fail again. I'm willing to soak my hands in BLD to ensure everyone I care for is safe, said Deku. A smile formed on Stain's lips. You're more of a hero than almost everyone I've met. Let's put your resolve to the test, he said before he sprinted forward. Deku moved in and his eyes tracked Stain's sword, and he ducked under the swing and drove his fist straight into his gut, making him fly up in the air. Deku then jumped up and slammed his other fist into him, making him fly backwards from the force of the punch. Stain fell to the ground and held his ribs in pain since he felt that at least 5 of them were broken from those punches. He then quickly grabbed 2 knives and threw them at Deku while he sprinted forward to get back into the fight. He just needed to cut him and lick his BLD and then he would have won. Detroit Smash, said Deku, punching the air and releasing a massive air blast that acted like a cannon. The blast destroyed Teacher Alley and Stain only just managed to dodge it, but he then realized he made another mistake. He was hanging off a fire escape and his body was exposed. Deku seemingly appeared before him by using 15% and kicked him right in his arms, snapping while the force of the kick broke more of his ribs and sent him flying through the wall of the building. Damn it. It's like he knows my moves and isn't letting me get close, or he just moves faster. Not only that, but now I have a broke arm, thought Stain in anger. Are you going to surrender? I have much more important people to hunt and 3 I have to kill, said Deku. I can't wrap my head around you. You were at UA and yet you threw it away and now are a vigilante and are killing some villains or beating them up and some you cripple, said Stain, standing up with gritted teeth. None of this makes sense no matter how much you think about it. Your goals and motives aren't hero-like, and yet at the same time, you're the most heroic person besides All Might that I have ever met. You wouldn't understand or believe me if I was to sit here and explain the entire thing to you, said Deku as green lightning arched around him and he charged forward. Stain moved out of the way and got ready to continue the fight. Burn, said Dabi as he burned a Nomu that 𝗵𝗃𝗃 just finished getting BLD from. I think we only have that one that shoots lightning left since 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 killed the first, she said, holding up 2 vials of BLD. We should head to where the chaos is unfolding in case we need to help, he said as he started to head that way. I hope Aiza gives me lots of his BLD for the good work I did, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 chirped as she pulled up her face mask and started to skip while following Dabi. It didn't take them long to arrive in the main street. They saw lots of heroes trying to help civilians, while others were trying to put out the fires. In the distance they also saw 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 killing the lightning Nomu before he started to walk away with a teen with red and white hair following him. Seems we're done here. It'd be stupid for us to try and get the BLD with this many eyes on us, said Dabi, glaring pure hatred towards 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 nodded her head and they were about to leave when one of the building's walls exploded outwards. Stain went flying out and he slammed into a car and spit out BLD from the impact. He slowly looked up and he had to force his body to move to dodge Deku. A green blur slammed into the car, caving in the roof of the vehicle before he turned towards the hero killer. Stain's body was a mess. He had a broken arm, broken ribs and multiple fractures along with massive bruising that was forming all over his body. Deku bent his knees slightly and the smell of ozone was in the air as he increased his power. You are right that lots of heroes are fakes and don't deserve licenses, but where you are wrong is targeting all heroes. Not everyone can be All Might. I'm no All Might, but I will fight and die to save and protect people, even if it means I have to kill to ensure it. Stain looked at him with bloodshot eyes and foggy vision. He couldn't fully make it out. But it looked as if All Might was standing behind him, as if he was passing the torch. Why, he said between pained breaths, are true hero. Izuku Midoriya. Now, finish this battle. Deku said nothing in response and he shot forward with his arm reared back. Kansas smash. The blow folded Stain over and sent him flying into the wall where he smashed into it and collapsed on the ground unconscious, but had a small smile since he knew that society was in safe hands with him. Seeing that he was finally unconscious, Deku let out a sigh before he looked off towards the other heroes who were staring at him. He ignored them all, even 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 who was charging at him, since he saw someone in the distance. Tamura Shigaraki. Rage he hasn't felt in a long time flooded through him and the ground under him shattered as he jumped to his gauntlets maximum. 45%, he whispered before he seemingly disappeared and appeared on Endeavor's shoulder, who tried to attack him. 𝗵𝗃𝗃. His foot landed down on said man's shoulder and all the force and momentum went straight to it, snapping his collarbone in half. He used the number 2's body as a springboard before he shot off towards Shigaraki. Todoroki tried to stop him, but he couldn't even turn his head before Izuku was gone. Game O dash. Shigaraki stopped mid-sentence as he saw all this unfold, and then Deku appear right in front of him with murder in his eyes. 45% Texas smash. He screamed as his fist flew forward. 𝗂𝗄𝗁 reacted as fast as he could and opened a portal taking him and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 away, but he wasn't fast enough. The force of the punch hit Shigaraki head-on and he was sent flying into his bar and smashed through multiple walls before he crumbled to the ground, a broken and barely alive mess. 𝗂𝗄𝗁 closed the portal as fast as he could before another punch could make it through. He then ran to 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and found his broken body on the ground. He was barely breathing and he looked more like a pin cushion with the amount of pieces of broken wood in him. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, he said, puking out a massive glob of blood from his shattered jaw and broken skull. The right side of his face was scarred beyond recognition and the eye was also destroyed. 𝗂𝗄𝗁 quickly opened another portal, left the destroyed bar since he could hear police sirens from the explosion, and he took Shigaraki to Dr. Garaki in hopes that he might be able to save 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Back with Izuku, he saw the portal close and he let out a scream in rage, seeing that he wasn't 100% sure if he killed Shigaraki or not. But the one thing he knew he did was delay any plans that 𝗵𝗃𝗃 had. A gunshot was heard and Deku dodged the bullet with practiced ease, and he looked down to the ground, seeing officers shooting at him, with heroes charging at him. Letting out a growl, he shot off into the night to loose the cops and heroes. As he soared through the sky, he sent a message to both 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 to drop off the blood samples to a detective named 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃. I need to unlock Black Whip faster. No telling what 𝗵𝗃𝗃 will do now that I openly tried to kill his new body, he said to himself, leaving the area at a faster rate now. Not only that, but I can't let him find out about Eri. I love you, Papa. He heard in the back of his head as an image flashed of Eri running up to him and hugging him as tightly as her little arms could let her. Never again. I won't let you hurt them ever again, all for 1 inch, he said as some of the lightning around his body turned black from his rage. All for 1 was standing next to Garaki as he looked at 𝗵𝗃𝗃, who was in an embiotic tank to help accelerate his healing. He even had to give him 2 of his healing quirks to make it go faster, or else he would have taken months to heal. Tell me, 𝗂𝗄𝗁. What happened? He said in a cold, flat tone that didn't betray any emotion. 𝗂𝗄𝗁 flinched at hearing that. Taking a large gulp to remove the lump in his throat, he spoke. The heroes were taking out the Nomu, though 2 of them were seemingly killed by blue fire. Then after the last 2 died, we were about to leave when we saw Deku take down Stain. Then what? He said, making 𝗂𝗄𝗁 sweat more. He saw us. Then out of nowhere he appeared right in front of us, and it was only because I was already opening a portal that 𝗵𝗃𝗃 survived. All for 1 said nothing and remained silent for a couple of moments as he watched the healing quirks and healing properties of the embiotic slowly healing him. I see. It seems he's more dangerous than I thought, he said quietly to himself. Turning to Garaki, he continued to speak. Contact the Hero Association and give them a large amount of money to send hero kill teams after Deku. Even with him having OFA, he'll be too much of a threat. At once, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, said Garaki, walking off to call his contacts in the upper levels of the Hero Association. Izuku Midoriya. You're too much of a threat, he said with a slight tone of anger, but just in case. I need to make some contingency plans. Izuku. I want to give you something, said Eri, walking up to Izuku holding a small letter in her hands while behind her, Ochako, Toru, Momo, Tsu and Mina along with Aizawa encouraging her forward. What's up, Eri? He said with a slightly tired expression, looking at her while cooking something in the pot. Deku's fist slammed into the face of a man on the ground. It was beaten badly, with it barely recognizable, with missing teeth and massive swollen lumps. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. The man said while spitting out blood, but was met by Deku's fist again. Izuku squatted down to her level and saw that Eri looked both embarrassed and nervous as she played with the letter in her hand. she said as a blush formed on her face, making her look more adorable. I want to give you this, she said as she shakily gave it to him. He took the letter from her and saw in the corner of his eyes, she was playing with the hem of her red skirt while looking down at the ground with her cheeks being stained red. The man screamed in pain as he tried to use his arm to push Deku away, but his arm was grabbed and snapped like nothing. Behind Deku was 𝗬𝗵𝗃 as he watched this with a glare. The man that Deku was beating to death was a monster, something not even his own father would ever do. He was a 𝗵𝘃𝗲 and used his hero status to lure kids that liked him. 𝗬𝗵𝗃 was pulled out of his thoughts as he heard crying. He looked back to the bed and saw 𝗵𝗃𝗃 comforting the little girl that the hero had with him. She wrapped her up in a blanket and was trying to calm her down. Izuku froze when he read the letter. It was an adoption form. Eri was asking him to adopt her. Will you be my dad? She said, extremely nervous on what he'll say. A tear ran down his cheek and he reached out and pulled her into a tight hug. Yes, Eri. I'll be your dad, he said, feeling genuinely happy after all the pain him and everyone went through over the past year, since UA was destroyed. Thank you, Dad, she said, hugging him just as tightly. He smiled happily as he held his daughter in his arms. He gently kissed her horn, which made her giggle in happiness. Deku stood up as he glared at the broken form of the hero under him. He was a broken mess and was barely conscious from the beating he took. Monsters like you don't deserve to live, especially since you then sell the kids when you're done, Deku seethed out as he picked him up. The stash. He said through his broken jaw. 𝗵𝘃𝗲𝗵𝐸. 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗃, said Deku as he held the hero by his neck outwards. With pleasure, he said, raising his arm and shooting out a wave of flames. The fire hit the hero directly and he started to scream even more in pain. He was then suddenly pulled to the window and had to look Deku right in the eyes. Burn in hell, said Deku before he raised his leg and kicked him out the window, making him both fall and burn to death. Izuku, said 𝗵𝗃𝗃 looking at him as he glared out the window towards the man with nothing but pure hatred. What will we do with her? She said, gesturing to the little girl. Wait for the police to show up, then we leave, he said as more bolts of green and black lightning arched around his body. What will we do afterwards? Said 𝗬𝗵𝗃. Hunt down a couple of villains and heroes along with some drag and human trafficking rings, said Deku. The other two nodded, and in the distance they could hear the sound of police and ambulance sirens, which meant it was about time to leave. About 10 minutes later, 𝗬𝗁𝗁 arrived at the top floor of the apartment penthouse where the murder occurred. Officers were already searching for clues and a detective on scene was talking to the little girl. 𝗬𝗁𝗁, good to see you, said Sansa walking towards him. So I got a quick gist of the situation, but what's really going on? He said, looking at his longtime friend and colleague. From what we've found so far, it's a hero that was killed. But that's not the worst part. He was a 𝗵𝘃𝗃 and we found lots of evidence that he used his hero status to lure kids in. After that he'd sell them to human traffickers to make a quick buck, said Sansa, looking physically sick from just talking about it. 𝗬𝗁𝗁 wasn't far off, no matter how many horrible cases he saw and went through. The ones like this always made him sick to his stomach and, in all honesty, wished he could have an hour with the person so he could beat him or her for that entire hour. Okay, so who killed the hero? Said 𝗬𝗁𝗁. We believe it was Deku. We didn't catch any security camera footage on him arriving. The only footage we have was of the hero falling and burning to his death, said Sansa. He was about to talk when the chief walked in, with a man who had a stone-cold face that didn't betray a single emotion. All of you are relieved and can go home. The Hero Association will take care of this case now, said the chief as he walked into the room with an agent next to him. What? But Chief 𝗬𝗏, he said before being cut off by the Hero Association agent. He told you to leave. This is our job now. Now go or else there will be consequences. The police were reluctant but all left, and as they walked out, they passed more agents of forensics members of the Hero Association waiting in the hall. So this case is all yours. What do you want to do with the clear evidence of this hero being a 𝗵𝘃𝗃? Said the chief. Erase it all and pay off the family to keep quiet. If they don't, then we'll take care of it, said the agent, looking around the room. We can't let society crumble because of some vigilante changing the status quo. Nodded his head and walked out of the room to leave it to the Hero Association. They knew what was best for society. After all, they were all run by powerful people in the government. Hey guys. How was your internships? Said Denki, not really sure what to say given that they all saw Izuku on TV fighting Stain and even breaking 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗂's collarbone. We are good, I guess. Said Ojiro, not really sure what to say. So, did any of you see the news a couple days ago, along with last night? Said Kirishima. Yeah, I did. Said Ochako as she remembered it. The vigilante or villain named Deku has broken into the house of the hero 𝗬𝗏𝗪 and brutally beat him before throwing him out his own apartment window. No evidence has been found why he would do that, and police along with Hero Association members believe it was an act of aggression. Something about that didn't seem right to her. Izuku would never do anything like that for no reason. Her and the other girls talked about it and none of them could wrap their heads around it. Why would he just kill a hero for no reason? They talked about this and everything else over the last week. Nothing made sense. From him pushing everybody away, to him keeping himself far away from them and finally leaving UA and became a vigilante. They all asked the teachers and they, including the rest of the class, noticed one thing. When they asked Aizawa or All Might, a painful expression appeared on their faces before they either changed the topic or said they couldn't answer. Just then the door opened and Aizawa walked into class with no bandages on his body. Welcome back, class. I'm sure your internships were very productive for all of you, said Aizawa. The students nodded in agreement, and before he could begin the class's lesson, Mina raised her hand. Yes, Ishido. Sir, is what the news is saying about Midori true? She said, honestly hoping that he wasn't brutally killing heroes. He was too cute and nice for something like that. Aizawa sighed and sat down in his chair staring at one. It's true that he did kill that hero. Some were shocked at hearing it was true. So does that mean we are going to have to fight him? Said Tokoyami. In Aizawa's mind a memory of Izuku's came to him. Izuku, please, kill me. I don't want to hurt my friends, said Tokoyami in a monstrous form since All for One got his hands on him. No, Tokoyami. I won't kill you. I'm not sure, he said, but I hope you won't have to, for both your sake and his own. But he's a villain now and we should stop him, said Mineta, terrified at the idea of fighting him. The girls and most of the guys all glared at him. Ochako was about to yell at him, but surprisingly Katsuki beat her to it. Don't you ever call him AF villain. He snapped at Mineta, glaring at the midget. Mineta shrunk into his seat, but Ojiro then spoke up. I mean, he does have a point. Midoriya is killing people now or even crippling them. That also includes heroes now. He's basically a villain. I'm sure he has a reason, said Ochako, standing up. Yeah, I mean, think about it. After the sports festival he just suddenly changed, said Toru, standing up. Deku has a reason, and when we see him, we will ask him, right guys? Said Ochako. Most of the class nodded in agreement while a couple of them didn't. Izuku crossed a line and they just couldn't gloss it over. He killed people and heroes don't kill no matter the circumstances. I saw him, said Ida, getting the entire class's attention. All eyes were on him and he continued to speak. I went to try and kill Stain, but the hero killer beat me with a single cut. Then Midoriya showed up and just dominated the fight. The hero killer didn't even stand a chance against him. Not only that, but he didn't pull any punches and was going for ending the fight without killing him. That may be so, but he's killed a hero, said Mineta. He's a villain now, not a 6-. He was slapped across the face by Momo, who was glaring at him. Midoriya may have done horrible things, but it's our job as heroes to save people, and Midoriya talked about that all the time. As his classmates and friends, our job to help him and find out why he's doing this, she said. A division was formed in the class, with a good chunk defending him while others couldn't. And sadly one of the ones who couldn't defend him was Ida, even though he saved him, because he couldn't even forgive himself for trying to. As all this happened, Aizawa watched this and hoped that maybe, just maybe, Izuku's classmates and others will be able to save him from this dark path he's walking. He then turned around and went to the blackboard. Today's hero lesson will be about hostage situations and how to deal with them. We are going to start with a villain holding one hostage, and before summer starts, I want all of you to be able to handle multiple villains and hostages. Meanwhile, deep down in Tartarus, the president of the Hero Association entered a room with 2 assassins. She sat down at the table and looked at them. "I've got both of you here for a special assignment. I want you 2 to kill someone who's a threat to society," she said in a cold, emotionless tone. "I'd never work for a corrupt organization like yours," said Stain in heavy bandages and casts on his body from the fight against Deku. Lady Nagant just glared at her and said nothing while being heavily restrained to the chair she was in. "You 2 don't have a choice," she said coldly while pulling out 3 files from her bag and putting one on the table. It showed a picture of Izuku and showed the available information on him that they knew. "You are to kill this boy, he's a threat to our society. Like I told you, no, some like you deserve to rot in the darkest pits of hell," said Stain. "You threw me in jail for killing your board and old president, so you won't get anything from me," said Nagant. The president didn't react at all and put 2 folders down and opened them, making both of them freeze. "If you don't follow our orders and kill 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗲, then we shall kill your families before your eyes and hang their corpses in front of your cells," she said in the same cold, emotionless tone. Stain was glaring in pure hatred as he looked at her, then the picture of his father who moved to South Korea. For Kana, she was looking at a picture of her elderly mother who was in a retirement home. "You're nothing but a demon monster. You're just as bad as the villains," screamed Stain, trying to stand up, but an agent behind him grabbed the back of his head and slammed him so hard into the table he left a dent in the metal. "I'm not a villain, I'm just a person who is going to protect our society and ensure we continue to lead them on the right path," she said, not even flinching at Stain's outburst. "You people are true monsters," said Kana. "Monster is a relative term. To a canary, a cat is a monster," she said. "Now to help ensure you're doing your jobs, we'll insert a chip at the base of both of your necks with a kill switch. If you fail to kill him, you die. If are caught, your family dies. If you try and warn anyone, then you will die along with your family." Both of them felt rage building up in them. "Fine. See that out, Kana." Stain made a grunt with his face still being pinned to the table. As this conversation continued, one of the guards sent a message to someone on his phone hoping that this won't be on his radar anymore. A message went off on a phone and Deku picked it up. He began reading the message and sighed. Now he'll have worry about those 2 hunting him. He then looked back at his phone. This information will be enough for him to ignore the guard's crimes for now. "Because of me, things are changing from how they were supposed to happen. I'll have to be careful since I already changed some massive events which most likely created a butterfly effect," said Deku as he looked out at an apartment from a different rooftop he was on. He was watching his mom sleeping in her room holding a picture of him. "I'm sorry, Mom. But this is the only way to protect you, I promise. I won't let you get hurt," he said, standing up and leaping away into the night. As he ran, he tried to will Black Whip since he was at 20% now, but all he got was very tiny wisps. He concluded that he'll have to train harder and push himself more to finally get this quirk back, then hopefully get either float or smokescreen next. His ear twitched and he turned and caught a white blur. "Luna fall!" yelled 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 coming down to kick him. Deku raised both his arms and held it as a X to block the strike. He flew down and smashed into a roof where he slid a ways before coming to a skidding halt. Looking up, he saw her land on the ground with a large smile on her face. "I love you, Izuku," said Rumi as she trailed her robotic finger on his chest and gently kissed his cheek while laying on bed. "I love you too, Rumi," he said, kissing her forehead, making her ears flop down as she snuggled closer to him. Deku looked at her with a pained expression as memories of them being together flooded his mind, and then her being Aerith's 3rd mother figure since both Ochako and Mina died. "So you're Deku, huh?" she said, walking towards him with a large grin. "Let's fight. It's been a long time since I've had a good fight." He said nothing as he looked down to the ground. Then green and black lightning arched around him as he looked up at her. "I'm sorry, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. But I don't have time to fight you and I don't want to hurt you." Rumi grinned in both excitement and annoyance. "Oh, so you think you can hurt me? Let's see if you can," she said, cracking the ground as she shot forward. "Izuku, after all of this, can we start a family?" said Rumi. He looked at her shocked before he smiled and gently cupped her chin and kissed her. "Yes, Rumi. When all of this is over, let's start a family." Rumi smiled happily and laid her hand on his chest over his heart as she listened to it. I'm happy. 1 week later. I'm sorry Izuku, said Rumi. Rumi! Screamed Izuku, forcing his body up and charging forward as Shigaraki took his hand off her. I love Y dash. Her body crumbled to dust before Izuku's eyes. Ha ha. Shigaraki laughed as he watched the pain and anguish of Izuku. Seeing how much pain he was in was hilarious to watch. 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃. Screamed Izuku as the stress of it all caused parts of his hair turn white and black lightning appeared around his body. Deku looked at her with sad broken eyes and dodged a kick from her. He now would have to fight one of the people he loved. And even now, after everything, still loved along with the others he dated. Deku stared at her with a hurt expression. He didn't want to fight her, but he knew that she wanted to fight him. She was fierce, violent and brash, plus loved fighting. Yet at the same time, she was loving, soft and loved physical contact and affection and had a soft side she only showed those she completely trusted. Let's get this fight started. She yelled as the ground under her cracked and she shot forward, spinning her body to get more force for her kick. Seeing the attack coming, Deku ducked under it and jumped backwards to gain some distance from her. Seeing this, she shot off again and went for another kick, but Deku recognized this attack and moved in while lifting his arm and grabbing her thigh to stop her strike. At the same time he said a quick apology and drove his knee right into her gut with 10%. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 coughed up saliva and was completely caught off guard. No one has ever moved in on one of her attacks. It's almost like he knew my attack, she thought while catching her breath. Luna Ring. Using her incredible leg strength, she kicked her leg and spun her body, but Deku dodged it again and used a quick Delaware smash to negate her attack. After she used that attack, she blasted towards him and did an axe kick which he blocked and countered with a jab to her stomach. The jab shot her off of him, but he had to quickly duck from her, grabbing a pole and using it launch herself back at him. Deku did a 15% Detroit smash which 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 dodged and launched at him. Izuku raised his hands to block the attack, but 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 changed direction mid-air and kicked him in the head. Deku stumbled back and was met with 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃's foot smashing into his face again and launching him across the city block, where he smacked into a light pole. He slowly stood up and watched as she was rocketing towards him while bouncing off the buildings. Deku lifted his leg up with green and black lightning arching around him. Kansas smash! Screamed Deku as he brought it down on the ground and lifted the road up, creating a wall. Deku used this to his advantage and sprung up and surprised 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 with a Detroit smash to her stomach as she cleared the wall. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 was launched up in the air and couldn't help but smile at seeing her opponent give her such a good fight. Shooting at each other again, they both swung out their legs which collided and shook the bones inside then from the sheer force of the kick. Kaguya Crescent. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 said, twisting her hips to get as much torque as she could to kick him. Deku powered up to 18% and countered the strike with his own, and both of them were shot in opposite directions and landed painfully on the ground. Around them civilians were screaming and running away, but some stayed and started to record the fight. Deku and 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 then raced towards each other and blocked each other with powerful high kicks. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 overpowered him and quickly jumped up in the air and did a spinning backwards kick. Deku brought his arm up and blocked as he was sent flying. He quickly kicked the air which stopped him mid-air, before he kicked his other leg and shot forward. He then bounded towards her and threw a punch which she caught but winced slightly by the force behind it. Deku then kneed her in the gut while she punched him with her free arm in the face. They both continued this brutal beating before Deku let go of her and kicked her away. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 skidded across the ground before she came to a stop and kicked a car at Deku. The car hit Deku, who caught it and planted his foot into the ground and threw the car at her. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 saw this and quickly dodged the car and landed on the side of the building, holding onto the ledge with her left arm. She looked at him and couldn't stop the smile from forming on her face. You're getting really good. I've never had a fight this fun before. Deku looked at her and spoke. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃, please stop this, I don't want to keep hurting you, he said. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 heard this and was about to say something when a foggy memory came to her. I love you, Rumi, said Izuku, kissing the crown of her head. Rumi smiled at that and hugged him tightly, snuggling her face in his chest. I love you too. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 shook her head and wondered why that image came to her. It wasn't mind control since all the top heroes are taught to recognize mind control given how popular and powerful they are. Not only that, but she felt the raw emotions. Happiness, joy. She looked back up at him with confused why she was feeling these things or seeing those images. Little did she know was that she wasn't the only one. Those who cared for him as a friend or loved ones were getting small glimpses of different images of their lives, or some who cared more deeply for him, images of love that felt more like memories and raw emotions. Your combat quirk didn't say anything about putting images into people's heads, she said looking at him. Deku raised an eyebrow at that. It doesn't, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Doesn't matter, I'll beat you and take you in, she said before shooting off towards him. Seeing her coming, he raised his arms up in AX and tanked the axe kick that came at him. He then grabbed her leg and lifted her off the ground before throwing her towards a different building. Flying off, she swung her legs and regained her balance so she was able to land feet first on the abandoned building wall. Looking up, she was met with Deku tackling her through the said wall since he wanted to restrain her long enough that she wouldn't be able to catch him. Smashing through the building, 𝗵𝘃𝗃 swung her leg and smashed it into Deku's side. But right after that another image entered her mind. So Izuku, after the war how many kids do you want? Rumi said with a healthy blush as she played with her growing hair. Deku moved in and spun his body and his foot barely missed her head. The blow though destroyed 2 rooms of the building. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 gritted her death and went in for a grapple, by blocking a punch by him and swining her body over. She then wrapped her feet around his neck and swung all of her body weight down to the ground to take him off balance. Feeling this, Deku did what seemed to be a backflip while making sure he had a death-like grip on 𝗵𝘃𝗃's legs for his new strategy to work correctly. Once his foot hit the ground, he changed the grip on her legs and swung her body with his and smashed it on the ground, where they both fell through the floor of the building. Quickly getting to her feet, she went in for a punch, but he caught it with his arm and tried to deliver a punch with his free arm but had to change it and stop her kick. He felt the blow make his bones creak, even with the increase in power and the gauntlets protecting him. He got sent back, but he managed to stop himself in time and ducked under a kick, then shot his hand forward where he placed his palm on her stomach and flexed the muscles in his arm. Given he used 20%, the flex acted like an open hand strike straight to her stomach and knocked the wind out of her as she took a couple steps back to regain her breath. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 for the last T-dash, Luna rise. Her foot clipped his chin and ripped his mask off while also cracking his jaw as he smashed through the ceiling. Landing painfully on the floor, he held his jaw in pain and looked up, seeing her land on the ground as well. I don't care, Rumi, just as long as it makes you and E happy, then I'm happy, said Izuku as a name faded out and she wasn't sure whose name it was. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 shook her head and tried to ignore the feelings in her chest. It was far too real to be a mind control or anything of the sorts. Yet she couldn't figure out what was going on. Deku used 5% and slammed his fist on the ground, caving the floor and made them fall to the next floor. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 fell on the ground hard and quickly swung up so she was standing. She looked up at Deku and charged at him. They both smashed into each other and kept trying to grapple the other or deliver powerful blows to stop the other one. Dodging a punch from Deku, she used her incredible flexibility to wrap her feet around his neck. She then swung her body down, slamming him on the ground painfully. Gritting his teeth, he sent OFA to his arm and slugged her in the stomach with 10%. The floor cracked from the blow and she looked up and saw pain in his eyes from having to hit her. I love you, Rumi, said Izuku, nuzzling his nose against hers, making her smile as her ears flopped backwards in happiness. I love you too, Izuku, she said as she looked up at him, giving the height difference. She then gave him a loving kiss, pouring all her love into it. Deku's arm clashed with her leg and the bones creaked from the force, but he pushed through and decked her cheek, making her brain rattle. But he was met with a kick to the side of his thigh that made him fall to one knee. 𝗵𝘃𝗃's knee came for his exposed chin, but he grabbed her leg before it could land and swung backwards, holding it while flipping his leg over to wrap around her neck to choke slam her to the ground. This grappling and vicious close quarters combat continued for another 2 minutes and entire sections of the building were damaged beyond repair. As they continued this fight, more images kept flashing through 𝗵𝘃𝗃's head, and for Deku, he kept remembering similar things from when he was with her. For both of them now, he had her pinned to the wall with both her arms over her head. He had one arm holding her leg up to prevent her from kicking him, and he used his right leg to hold her left one on the ground. Breathing was all that was heard as they stared at each other, and Deku remembered his time with her and how much he loved her. Miruko kept seeing images and felt the raw emotions of each one. Before she knew it, they felt more and more real, like a piece of her had been missing, but now was back. They both stared at each other, breathing heavily, exhausted from the battle and remembering all of his future while for her, seeing small images of it. Before Deku knew it, he succumbed to his emotions and smashed his lips against hers, shocking her, but not angering her. Before she knew it, she was kissing him back with just as much vigor. Soon their tongues were wrestling with each other, and Deeku's hand let go of her pinned arms, which she immediately used to wrap around his neck and back to pull him closer to her. Why am I missing him? I don't even know him, and yet I feel like I've loved him for a very long time, and I want to be with him and show him how much I missed his presence around me, she thought to herself as she kept kissing him. I love you, Rumi, said Izuku as pushed her down on the bed and kissed her, making her head go light. Before the kissing could get any more intense, Deku finally realized what he was doing and pried Miruko's arms off him and jumped away, not turning back as he ran. He was berating himself for doing something like that. But at the same time he wondered something else. Why did she kiss him back the same way she used after a long mission away from one another? With Miruko she was left in the same spot and placed one hand on her chest to feel her heart hammering away at a very fast rate, while at the same time with her other hand, she gently touched her lips and simply wondered one thing. Why did this make her so happy and feel loved, along with feeling butterflies in her stomach? The same kind as when you love someone. She had so many questions racing through her mind, but her most prominent ones were what were those images in her head and why were the emotions so real? Come on Deku, let's unpack this tent for me, you and, said Ochako in a heavily wooded area with the other survivors of the UA invasion. Izuku wasn't responding as he just kept staring at the ground with an unreadable expression. All Might, Kaken, Ojiro, Sato, Kyoka, Tamaki, Nijire, Hound Dog, Power Loader and lots of heroes and students were all dead because he didn't kill Shigaraki and he didn't reach All Might in time to save him. Ochako put down the stuff and slowly walked towards him and wrapped her arms around him. It's okay, Izuku. We will get through this and soon we all be able to get our lives back, said Ochako as the gently rubbed the top of his head. But how? All Might, Kaken and so many others are dead. All because I wasn't strong enough to kill Shigaraki like I should've. Nor was I able to kill all for 1 inch, said Izuku looking at her. Ochako smiled sadly and gently cupped his face as she looked into his eyes. Because I know you will defeat them, Izuku, you never give up. And that's why I fell in love with you, you never gave up and you always try your hardest to do the right thing, she said. She then leaned forward and gently kissed his forehead before bringing his head to her chest, hugging him and letting him listen to her heart. Izuku didn't know it, but he began to cry into her chest as she held him. She had to be strong for him. She promised herself that she will help hold him together during all of this. Ochako's eyes snapped open as she leaned up in her bed and held her chest, while breathing heavily. "Is that a dream?" she said. "No, that was way too real to be a dream." She looked around her room and then reached for her new smartphone that Momo made her as a gift. She decided to see if Deku was okay. As she looked through the internet, she came upon something that made her eyes go wide. Miruko is fighting Deku in Yuzurufu. Ochako cupped a hand over her mouth as she watched the fight. Deku. What? She was pulled out of thoughts when she heard a knock on the door. Walking to it and opening the door, she was met with Mina, Momo, Toru, Jiro and Tetsu. They all moved into the dorms soon after Deku started to hunt down villains and corrupt heroes. The school had them move in to help protect them. "Ochako, I think we need to talk, we already woke up the guys. Except for Mineta." "We left that for Denki," said Mina. Meanwhile, in front of Mineta's room, Denki was covering his nose from the smell. It smelt absolutely awful and he was 100% sure that if he had a blacklight, the room would glow white. What's it about?" said Ochako. They all looked at each other, then looked back at her and Momo spoke. "This is gonna sound ridiculous, but we all had something akin to visions and we saw things. Like battles or destruction. And a couple of us saw that we were dating people." "Why ya?" said Mina as she rubbed the back, and a lilac blush formed on her cheeks as she remembered her vision. She was dating Izuku and they had some little girl with them, both raising her after 𝗳𝗃𝗃 was killed. She could still feel the pure raw emotions from those visions she got. She couldn't fully explain it, but it felt as if she loved him and does love him. Of course she would admit that he was very cute and in all honesty handsome. 𝗳𝗃𝗃 looked at them shocked. I had something similar as well. They felt so real. She then placed a hand over her heart, even the emotions. They nodded and they went down to the common rook where everyone else was sitting with expressions that were ranging from sadness, anger, and depression. So, said Katsuki looking around at everyone, we all had similar visions. They all nodded in agreement as they remembered the visions they each individually saw. So Bakugo, what did you see? Said Kirishima looking at him. I pushed Izuku out of the way before a hand touched me, then everything went black as I watched him scream for me, said Katsuki. Momo looked down and played with her hands as she remembered what happened in her vision. My eyes opened and I was in a large room with massive tubes everywhere. It hurt so much and I looked down. I had metal parts stuck to me with those tubes attached to them. I was extremely pale and skinny. I could see every single rib on my body. Then I was picked up by Midoriya, who said I was going to be okay. Then I reached out and touched his face and said thank you for saving me. Then my eyes closed, said Momo as she remembered all those emotions she felt during that vision. I had something similar to me. Except I pushed Jiro away and told Midoriya, who was being carried by Aizawa, to protect her. Then those Nomu things attacked me and ripped me apart, said Denki as his hands started to shake in fear as he remembered it. So we all had these visions except each one of ours were different yet similar since they all involved Midoriya, said Todoroki trying to make heads or tails of this. Wait, I remember something, said Toru standing up suddenly with everyone's attention on the invisible girl. She spoke, remember how Aizawa and All Might senseis have been kinda depressed and sometimes have faraway looks? Maybe it's because they had something similar happen to them and they aren't telling us. Okay, but why would we all be getting these? Said Ida. It doesn't make any sense, since none of us had ever gone through any of this. Who knows? But maybe Hagakure is right and maybe we should ask them, said Kyoka biting on one of her jacks. They all agreed to do that and Ida pulled out his phone and called Aizawa. While that was happening, 𝗳𝗃𝗃 held her head as another vision entered her mind. Izuku, said 𝗳𝗃𝗃 while coughing up blood. 𝗳𝗃𝗃, screamed Izuku trying to stand up, but several Nomus held him down. I love you. And I always will. Please take care of Eri and find love, she said with a smile. Say goodbye to your girlfriend Deku, said a sickly voice as a hand touched her head. Nu 𝗳𝗃𝗃. 𝗳𝗃𝗃. I low dash, then everything went black. 𝗳𝗃𝗃 gasped when she was brought back to reality when Mina was shaking her. Hey 𝗳𝗃𝗃, you okay? Said Mina looking really concerned. I don't know, she said, that felt just as real as the others. And who's Eri? And why do I feel a strong maternal bond to that name? Deku finally arrived at a faraway building and landed on the roof painfully, with him smashing into the AC unit. He slowly stood up while groaning in pain. He felt it, his left arm was knocked out of its socket. Grabbing the arm and lining it up, he moved over so his left side was near the AC unit. Then he slammed his shoulder into it while gritting his teeth in pain. Slumping down, he sighed as he thought over his fight with Rumi. Why did he have to remember his time with her and the others back in the future? It made things so much harder and more painful. Damn it. I shouldn't have let my emotions control me and kiss her. But why didn't she fight back? It felt like she wanted to kiss me. Almost like how it used to be when we'd leave for a mission and come back. He aid trying to figure out why she'd do that. Deku then looked at his hand and tried to will black whip, but all that came was a single small black wisp. I have to get stronger. I only have 2 weeks until the training camp. And I still need to save Eri, he said standing up and looking out to the city. I will stop you all for one, Shigaraki, Overhaul and the Hero Association. I love you, Papa, said Eri hugging a large figure before her that was wearing a green hero costume. I love you too, Eri, said the voice. She felt a new emotion she couldn't even begin to describe what it felt like since this was the first time she's ever felt it, plus what was that papa word? She went to look up at him, but then everything changed and she felt unbelievable pain. Eri let out a scream as she was brought back to the lab on the operating table. "Good job, Eri, only 10 more times and we're done with today's session," said Overhaul, putting on a new surgical glove as he glossed over the fact he just killed Eri and brought her back to life again. She let out a tiny whimper. She had to go through this every single day. Get experimented on for hours and not even death could save her. She would just be brought back to life to go through over and over and over and over again every single day. "I will always protect you, Eri," said a voice as an image came to her of that same green hero costume with a yellow cape. She couldn't make out his face, but she saw that weird thing his lips were doing when they were up. Deep inside OFA was a green sun with flickers of black getting stronger and stronger, which was hovering high above a black void. All over the sun, cracks were formed all over it, and it seemed to be bleeding a red and black-like energy. The sun shook as it slowly faded more and more into a black star as the green slowly died. Other stars could be seen, but all of them were much smaller than the green/black star. They varied in colors, from white for the smallest and yellow for the biggest of the. Just then, the large green/black star shook again as black lightning arched off of it and shot out, attacking the other stars, entrapping them with the lightning. Once it did that, the stars began to be overtaken as the black/green star began to absorb the power of them and pulled them in. Once they were inside, they could faintly be seen inside the green/black star, and one of them had black tendrils shoot out, but then the black lightning shot out and began to corrupt the one with black tendrils. Then the lightning also shot out at the purple star, and the same thing happened, but instead, it tried to float away. Deku's rage and anger was changing OFA and the previous user's quirks. Giving it was still evolving, and with his now current mental state and rage, the quirks all began to evolve and change to something much darker and more villainous to suit what he needs. Deku was sitting on a roof near his HQ. He reached into his belt pocket and pulled out something he took from 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃. It was a cigarette. It was something he hated doing, but he needed the nicotine to calm himself down after what happened between him and Rumi. He couldn't wrap his head around why it happened. Or why she kissed him back. Just like. He shook his head and took off his hood and mask, showing his tired-looking eyes that had massive bags under them, along with how pale he actually was. His hair even started to grow more and was longer than normal. He was honestly just happy his hair wasn't turning white like it did back in the future from all the stress he was under along with emotional pain. Putting the cigarette in his mouth, he lit it and took a deep inhale of the smoke, letting it fill his lungs. He held it for a couple of seconds before blowing it out as he stared out at the black sky that had no moon, but lots of clouds. Deku took another puff of the cigarette and sighed. He leaned backward against the wall and looked out into the city while lost in thought. He was so lost he almost didn't see a phone he stole from an information broker go off. He pulled it out of his pocket and read the message and felt his body go cold before rage took over. The dead mother is back in Japan. She was Japan's most terrifying female villain. She was put in charge of all human, child trafficking and assassin work from All for One. She was good at her job, so good that it was next to impossible for the police and underground heroes to even find her operations. Deku remembered her well. After UA fell and All for One more or less took over Japan, she all but quadrupled her operations and had her men openly kidnap kids or people with strong quirks to either sell them or give them to All for One. Taking another drag from his cigarette, he finished it and threw the butt away and stood up, looking over the city with a dark glare. He had to hunt her down. If he took her down, that would greatly weaken All for One's influence and control over Japan. Raising his hand, he tried to will Black Whip to life, but all that happened was tiny wisps exited his hands with great effort and pain, giving his body could only naturally handle 21%. He was close to actually being able to handle the stress of a second quirk. "It's time to go hunting for someone who should have been killed a long time ago," said Deku, standing to his full height as he put his mask back on and pulled his hood over his head. Black lightning arched around him with only a couple bolts being green as he powered up One for All and activated his gauntlets and used 35% before he shot off through the sky. Inoue Ochako and the others who supported Izuku and still believed in him were walking down the hall towards Aizawa's office. As they walked, Some of them were talking while the rest remained silent in thought, giving they all had similar dreams and they would have to explain this to Aizawa in a way he wouldn't think they were crazy. Meanwhile, Aizawa was looking at All Might and let out a sigh. You saw them too, didn't you? All Might cupped his together as he rubbed them. The last thing he remembered seeing before he passed was Izuku racing towards him, screaming his name before a fist pierced his chest. Though it wasn't long like yours. But it did show some things, said All Might. We also have another issue, Aizawa said, gesturing to his monitor that had a large statement on the screen. The vigilante Deku defeats the number 9 heroine 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗀. Midoriya will now have an even larger target on his head. And we will most likely be forced to hunt him down along with the top 10 and hero hunters that the Hero Association is very likely to send out now if they haven't already, said Aizawa. I don't want to fight young Midoriya, he said, looking down. All Might, screamed Izuku, racing towards him with his arm outstretched. He shook his head to get that image out of his head. The first time was painful enough, and he doesn't want to keep reliving it today or any time for that matter. You may not have a choice. He defeated 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗀 and back during the Stain fight. He snapped 𝗵𝗃𝗃's collarbone in half by jumping off of him, giving that you'll most likely be recruited along with me, said Aizawa, speaking logically. How did everything go so wrong? Said All Might with his face in his hands in despair. He's been actively avoiding the cities that Izuku was present in so he wouldn't be forced to fight him, but now he may not have a choice anymore, giving Izuku just defeated one of the top 10 in a fight. They both then heard a knock on the door before someone spoke. Can we come in, Aizawa-sensei? Said Ochako from the other side of the door. All Might quickly buffed up and nodded to Aizawa. Come in. The door opened and most of Class 1A was standing in front of him, all staring at him. Mr. Aizawa, we have a question for you. This may sound crazy, but we need you to bear with us, said Momo, looking at him. What is it? He said with curiosity and wondering if they possibly saw what him and All Might saw. WL. Momo couldn't find the right words, so Katsuki walked up and spoke. We all had strange dreams last night. Some of us saw different things that we've never seen before. Not only that, but we felt it all. It was way too real to be a dream, said Katsuki. Not only that, but ever since the sports festival, you and All Might have been acting differently, said Todoroki. All Might and Aizawa looked at each other, and Aizawa spoke. I can't say. What do you mean you can't say? Asked Kirishima, confused. I can't tell you what's going on or your dreams. 𝗍𝗂𝗧 barred me or All Might from telling you, said Aizawa. What? But we have a right to know. Yelled Denki, annoyed at this. 𝗍𝗂𝗧 has his reasons for not allowing us to explain more, but just know this is for your own safety and to not push your luck with this subject. It's a very sensitive topic, said Aizawa. He's right, young ones. This is a very delicate situation, said All Might. How is it delicate? Also, I can hear your hearts, and they are beating faster in the same way someone lies, said Kyoka. Listen, it's just best if you forget about that dream you had, focus on school, said Aizawa. But sensei, said Ochako desperately. I saw Deku-kun fighting someone, and then he held me in his arms before I died because of Shigaraki. It felt so real, so tell us what's going on. Aizawa sighed. He couldn't tell them the truth or else they will hunt Midoriya down to bring him back home. And he would fight back this time. He's doing all of this to protect everyone and keep the League's attention solely on him and not UA. We can't, young Uraraka. I'm sorry, but this is a touchy subject, so it's best if you forget you ever had that dream, said All Might. Ochako looked at her teachers in shock before she started to cry. She then turned around and ran away. As she ran down the halls, her mind was a mess with thoughts. Izuku, I know you're involved with this and I promise you, we will save you and then help save our daughter Air Dash. She stopped running as she held her head in pain. It felt like something was getting shoved inside her head and more images entered it. What's happening? She said quietly to herself as she held it and looked up when her eyes widened in shock. Before her was a ethereal version of herself in her hero costume. Please save him. We couldn't save him and now he's suffering for it. We have a chance now, but it can only happen. before it could finish speaking it faded and another wave of memories flooded through her mind. "I love you, Ochako," said a very tired Izuku as he was holding a small white-haired girl in his lap. "I love you too, Izuku," she said, kissing his cheek and leaning against him with a smile. Ochako leaned against the wall and held her head. These images or memories kept hitting her more and more, and now she saw herself. Not only that, but it asked her to save Izuku. What was happening? In a dark underground base, a woman with black clothing and long blonde hair was walking down the halls followed by 4 guards. She soon arrived in her office and walked to the desk where she sat down in her chair and looked at her guards. Her cold, emotionless face looked at them and waited for her subordinates to come and inform her on how many people they sold. "Dead mother," said her assistant, walking towards her holding some papers and placing them on her desk. Picking up the papers, she looked over them with a blank look. "So we only sold 274 people this month. That's under my marks for what we sell. I want us to sell 500 a month no matter what," she said. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but with that vigilante named Deku, we have to be more careful with our business, especially after he took out one of our council members," said the assistant, scared what she'd do. The dead mother's face stayed in its same emotionless look before she stood up and walked towards him. "You have failed me, and for that, I will personally torture your family, especially your precious little girl," she said with a smile finally forming on her face. "Wait, please," he said in fear, but 2 of the guards grabbed his arms and pinned him on his knees to the ground. "You are a sniveling creature, not even a human, and I shall make sure to hunt down all your 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗃 children and wife," she said with her smile growing, showing her psychotic side. Before he could say anything, a sword formed in her hand and she cut off the man's arm, making him scream in pain before she drove the blade through his head. She couldn't help but laugh. Killing these non-humans made her so happy. She always enjoyed when they suffered. Standing up, she looked at her guards and had a small smile. "Go bring his family here. I want to have some fun torturing them before I sell them. They have no purpose but to slv away for us now." The guards nodded and 2 of them left to go do what they were ordered to. Going back to her desk, she smiled. Watching these humans suffer will be fun. Outside of the building, Deku was standing perched on the ledge of the roof looking over the building. He remembered she was in and running her country-wide human trafficking operations. "So, Deku, why'd you bring us with you? You usually deal with these things alone," said 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃, walking up next to him. "The lady we are facing is a monster in human form. She's in charge human trafficking and assassination across all of Japan," said Deku. "Wait, are you serious?" said 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 with wide eyes. "Yes. She cares nothing about anyone or anything except for killing and making people suffer. She rules out of nothing but pure fear and brutality," said Deku as he watched a van pull up and a hero walked out in his civilian clothing. "Who's that?" said 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. "It's Raging Bull," said Deku, watching him talk to the guard before walking inside the building, "and I'm guessing he's here to buy someone." "So what's the plan?" said 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃 with a dark look as he tried to rein in his anger so his quirk won't accidentally activate. Deku looked at the warehouse for a little bit before he answered, "You go to the front entrance and wait for my signal, then cause hell for them. Toga, you sneak into the building and take out the security before you start to kill the guards, but make sure you're not caught. They won't hesitate to kill you on the spot." "Got it, Aizu, but I want some extra BLD as a reward after this," she said with a big grin. He just sighed and nodded his head, making her squeal in happiness before she jumped off the roof and climbed down very fast with practiced ease. Once on the ground, she seemingly disappeared from sight and made her way over to the building. Once near it, she followed a guard whose path was in a spot where the security cameras couldn't see, plus it had a small vent just big enough for her to squeeze in. Waiting patiently, she watched him walk away and knew she only had 1 minute to get this done. Back with Deku, he jumped off the roof and soared over the street until he landed on the roof of the building he was going to break into. He then snuck over to the skylight and saw 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 look up at him and nod before she walked towards the security room where the guards monitor everything. He had to wait a couple minutes before he got the signal, which was her taking out her bloody knife and reflecting the light up towards him. Seeing this, he sent a text to 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃 and waited until he saw blue flames and heard the screaming. Once he heard that, he jumped high into the air and twisted his body so he was facing the building. He then kicked the air, shooting down like a bullet, smashing through the window. landing directly on top of a guard, snapping his spine in half from the force. Looking up, he cranked the power up to 30% and shot forward. Deku appeared before a guard, kicking him in the face, shattering his jaw. He then spun around, grabbing a man's arm, before he swung him into a support beam, shattering his back. Deku turned and dashed forward, driving his knee into a guard's gut so hard he puked out BLD from the force and fell to the ground unconscious. Inside the building, panic was ensuing and communication was haphazard, giving 𝗵𝗃𝗃 killed the security team and 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗃 the building's communications and cameras. Outside was a different story. Before Dabi was well over 30 burned bodies of the guards who came to kill him. He took out a cigarette and was about to put the pack away when he saw that one was missing. He narrowed his eyes as he tried to think of when he took out a fifth cigarette when he only remembers smoking 4. He started to rack his brain. When he remembered something, Deku smelled like cigarettes when he came back. Guess fighting Miruko made him need to smoke, he said with a sigh. Should have told me he needed one instead of just taking one. Back inside the building, Deku just killed that hero, and he was now running down the halls trying to find the dead mother's office. He ran up the 6th flight of stairs and began to check rooms, either finding finely furnished bedrooms that had unconscious people tied to the beds or storage or guard rooms. He continued to search each room and he finally arrived at what he was looking for. Down the hall was a large grand door made of fine oak. In front of it was over 40 guards and they were all ready to defend the dead mother. Deku's eyes hardened and his black lightning grew in intensity, with a bolt of it hitting the wall and leaving a nasty burn on it. He flashed forward looking like a black and green blur before the guards. He seemingly appeared in front of them with his fist ped backwards with black lightning arching around it. Black flash. The blow hit and most of the guards were killed or maimed instantly. Deku walked past the corpses and kicked open the door and saw her with his own eyes. She was a tall, appealing woman with blue eyes and long flowing blonde hair. She also appeared to have pointed ears and she was wearing something akin to a traditional kimono. Though the creepiest part was that the ends of her kimono was a dark red, especially around her feet and hands. In the corner of his eyes he saw a pool of BLD in her bathroom with a skinned body of what looked like a woman in the tub. So we finally meet Deku. I must say you have been proving to be very annoying to deal with. You've been ruining my business, she said with her same emotionless face and voice. I'm not here to talk, I'm here to kill you, said Deku. She looked at him and grinned darkly before her face became more twisted and sinister. Then you will die by my hand. Deku charged at her and dodged a slash from her sword that she created from thin air. It came within millimeters of his chest, but he moved just fast enough and threw a punch. She saw it coming and easily dodged the strike while jumping backwards. I must say, for a disgusting creature like you, you are fascinating to believe, born without a quirk. Then when you turn 15 it seemingly appears, she said with a tone he couldn't read. It's revolting knowing that a once quirkless creature now has a quirk. Not only that, but both of your parents have weak quirks, nothing like yours. Deku's eyes hardened more and he moved in, kicking her sword which broke it instantly. Not seeming fazed at all, she created another sword and managed to get a nasty cut across his chest. Feeling the blade cut him, he hissed in pain but pushed through and landed a solid blow against her face, sending her back. Flying back, she spun her body and drove her sword into the ground, stopping her almost instantly. Dark reckoning, said Deku as he shot forward using 40% and dropped to the floor, before he spun his body up and kicked her chin hard. Once she was airborne he pushed off the ground and spun his body and smashed his foot into her collarbone. Feeling the excruciating pain she couldn't help but smile and pushed through it and slashed her sword in a very fast motion. Deku saw the blade coming and leaned his head back, but it made contact with his face and left a scar over his right eye. Thankfully it didn't take the eye, but it came close. Yes, this is fun, she said in a psychotic way. She always loved pain and violence more than anything. Can't you feel it? We will soon end up killing each other and feel each other's pain as we die. You're a sick monster, said Deku, blocking a strike of her sword, but then her other hand created one which stabbed him through his stomach. I know. It's so wonderful. Hell, I still remember back when I was young and I beat a kid almost to death because he tried to sink my toy boat, she said. Seeing the fear and pain in him just felt so wonderful. she said with a crazed grin that made 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃 look innocent. Deku tried to pull the blade out, but she released her grip on the other and created a knife and drove it into his side while laughing. She kept stabbing him over and over faster than he could fully process it. He grabbed her head and tried to crush it, but she then stabbed his arm. Don't ruin the fun. I've never had this much in a long time. Anger was welling up in Deku and his lightning was becoming more erratic before he tightened his hold on her and something he didn't expect happened. The black lightning he was generating started to electrocute her and burn her skin, making her scream in anger as she tried to stab him again by the lightning hit her arm and burned it away. Burn in hell, yelled Deku, not looking a gift horse in the mouth and focusing on his feelings, and began to electrocuting her to death. After just a couple seconds, her burned corpse finally released her grip on him and fell backwards to the ground dead. Holding his side, he fell to his knees and contacted 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃 and 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃 that they were leaving and he needed to find an underground doctor who won't rat him out or try and kill him. An hour later, the police and a bunch of heroes were at the premises, taking all the victims to the station to help them. They also arrested any leftover surviving guards. Meanwhile, on a rooftop, the same one Deku was on earlier was two figures. We are getting closer to his trail, said Stain with a glare as he subconsciously went to touch the back of his neck, but heard a beep which warned him he'll die if he tries. Indeed we are. Even though we don't want to, said Lady Nagant with a glare. All for One was a man who can look at failure and turn it around to make it victory. This is one of the reasons why he's lived so long and cheated death so many times. He rarely let petty things like anger, jealousy, or rage consume him, but right now, he was enraged. He was staring at his informant who told him about the death of the dead mother. Not only that, but apparently 4 of her captains were killed, and this severely damaged his income and control over the underworld. Turning his head towards the embryonic tank that had 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃 in it, his emotionless face changed into an evil grin as he stood up. It's time he set his emergency plan into action. Pushing a button near his chair, the TV screen made a low hum before the doctor answered. Did you require me for something, sir? He said, looking up from his latest project he called Hood. Yes, I shall be heading to the lab to give you Tamura's gift that I want you to give when he's strong enough to handle it, he said. Deku was standing on top of a skyscraper looking over the city while his eyes were trained on the airport. He watched as the plane his classmates were on took off, heading to Island. Taking a step forward, he fell off the building, falling towards the ground. After falling a short ways, he kicked the air hard and started to rocket towards the plane. As he soared through the air, he continued to kick the air quickly, catching up the plane as more black and tiny bits of green lightning arched around his body. Giving it one more hard kick, he grabbed the tail of the plane and pulled himself forward until he found a spot that was slightly more comfortable. He then reached for his back where he had some oxygen tanks he stole from a diving school. Getting them prepared, he now just had to wait until the plane got higher so he could turn on the oxygen tanks for him to breathe. I will do my best to prevent Wolfram from ruining my friend's vacation or killing people. Though Sam deserves it. Meanwhile, inside the plane, most of 1A was insufit. Ochako let out a sigh as she sat in her seat. Her mind went back to all those dreams she's been having along with the news from 3 days ago. Deku and his supposed allies went to a warehouse and they all brutally killed some villains from a massive human trafficking warehouse. He also apparently killed the leader of them. Though the government was angry since they wanted her captured for questioning and to put her on trial. Ochako, you okay? Asked Mina, sitting down next to her and playing a hand on her shoulder. I don't know. I keep having dreams of me and Izuku being together, she said, looking down. Mina looked at her with a sad smile. She then pulled her into a hug and gently stroked her back. She understood what she was going through, given she was dealing with the same thing. Mina was having dreams similar to Ochako's, and in some of those, things got a little NTMT with Izuku. Thankfully for her, Ochako didn't notice her cheeks gain a lilac tint to them. I don't know what to do, Mina. Izuku is hurting. He's all alone and now most of Japan wants him dead for what he's doing, even though he's taking down villains. Then we have these dreams going on that feel far too real to be dreams, said Ochako. I know, Ochako. I know. All we can do is train so we can get stronger. Then maybe we can save him and bring him back, said Mina. Ochako looked up at her and nodded her head, but her eyes did catch the way Mina's eyes looked. They held the same look Mina always she has whenever she looks at Izuku. Wait, does she like Izuku too? Thought Ochako looking at her friend. Meanwhile, a couple seats away, Katsuki was sitting in his chair staring out the window with an expression void of life. As he continued to stare, his hands subconsciously went towards the new scars he had thanks to Izuku. He began to rub his hand over them as his own mind thought over everything. His whole life he bullied and belittled him. All for what? Him not being born with a quirk. No matter how Katsuki cut it. He was the villain in the end. He grabbed his hair and began to pull it as regret, shame, and lastly self-hatred flooded into him. You're nothing more than a villain. Those words rang in his ears loudly and it made everything so much worse, along with the dreams him and the others had. Izuku, I'm sorry, he said to himself as he continued to stare out the window at the ocean. A couple hours later and the plane started its slow descent to land on Island. As it lowered in altitude towards Island, on the tail was Deku who looked at the island, before he jumped off the tail and kicked the air, rocketing towards the ground. Rocketing down, he waited till only 100 feet from the water, before he punched the air, which slowed him down enough for him to hit the water and not injure himself. As he sank a ways, he kicked the water and came back to the surface before he began his swim to the dock and to sneak into Island. With the members of 1A that showed up, they were all exploring the island in separate friend groups, but with Ochako's group they saw All Might talking to a blonde teenager. Kyoka said that apparently she's here to escort him to David as a surprise. They then went and continued to explore the island. They saw all sorts of inventions, rides, tourist spots, quirk testing areas and even people openly using their quirks, giving they used the U.S. rules with quirks, by allowing the citizens to use them without a hero license. This was based off the Second Amendment, but people could only use their quirks against people if it was for defense, and if their quirks were more dangerous, they had to go through special training and get a special license showing they could control it. I'm not gonna lie, said Kyoka looking around, I'm jealous that they can use their quirks without a hero license. It'd make mine and everyone else's lives so much easier. I agree, but at the same time America does have a higher crime rate than us, said Momo. At least they can use their quirks to defend themselves and not be thrown in jail for doing so, Kyoka bit back. Mina and Ochako couldn't help but agree with that. In Japan, especially nowadays, if you used your quirk for self-defense, you'll be punished severely, regardless of the fact it was self-defense no matter the reasoning. They all started to walk, but as they did, they passed someone that caught Ochako's eyes. He was a couple inches taller than her and he was wearing a baggy hoodie along with baggy breeds as he walked towards the central tower of Island. But the thing that caught her eyes was that under his hood, she saw forest green hair. Aizu, she whispered, but before she could say or do anything, he seemingly disappeared into the crowd as if he was never there. Sam smiled to himself as he was walking away from the docks. After helping Wolfram and his goons get in, everything was going according to plan and soon he'll be filthy rich and he can have Melissa all to himself. He couldn't help but subconsciously liking his lips at that thought. He soon arrived at his office and scanned his ID card on the scanner before he walked inside. Before the doors closed, they were suddenly forced open and Sam turned around and was met with a pair of metal saws from some shoes straight to his face, breaking his nose. Flying across his office, he smashed into the desk and fell to the ground, where he then heard the door get shut and he looked up holding his broken nose and he froze in fear. Where is Wolfram? Said Deku walking towards him as black and tiny bits of green lightning arched around his body. Who? Sam said hoping to play innocent, but he wasn't given that when Deku grabbed his head and smashed it straight through his desk and into the ground. Talk now, I know you made a deal with some villains, now tell me, Deku said watching as Sam held his bleeding head in pain. Looking up and showing his broken and missing teeth, along with bloody face, he glared, I haven't dash. A knee straight to the jaw, made a sickening crack as his head hit the computer monitor before he fell to the ground again. Sam let out a scream of pain, but he wasn't given any mercy as Deku smashed his foot into his head making it smack the wall again and the monitor fall off and crash on top of his head. Tell me now, Sam, where is 𝗵𝘃𝗲? Deku said darkly as he glared at the person who let his own greed cause events that almost killed thousands, if not millions, given the device he was helping the villains get. Sam looked up in fear and he gritted his teeth in anger. No, he said with his broken. I know that 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 made a device that can make quirks even stronger, and I know that he planned to hire a couple actors to stage a villain heist so he can take said device back and give it to All Might. I know that you were his trusted butler, yet you let your greed blind you and you instead hired real villains to take it, so you can get a massive amount of money and kidnap Melissa for yourself, said Deku. Sam looked up at him in fear, fully realizing his situation. 𝗵𝘃𝗲, he said in fear. I'm not any monster. I'm the one that hunts monsters, he said darkly as black lightning arched around him and he prepared to use his new quirk he developed. Now you're gonna tell me where he is, whether you like it or not. Sam began to shake in fear and all he could do is let out a scream that wasn't heard thanks to the soundproof walls. Back in Japan, 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗲 was laying on a couch with one of his cigarettes in his mouth, relaxing. His boss gave him and 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 the day off to do whatever they wanted while he was gone, just as long as they looked out for news on the League or the Yakuza along with the Hero Association. He went to take another drag when the door was opened and 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 came skipping in with a happy smile on her face. What got ya in a good mood? He said looking over at her. I managed to sneak into the Yakuza base, she said with a fanged grin. This immediately piqued his interest. He knew for a fact that Deku wanted them gone. When he asked why, he felt a shiver run down his spine from the dark look he gave him. They hurt someone I love. Shaking his head, he sat up and held out his hand to read the envelope. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 handed it to him. Before she walked over to the fridge they got installed, thanks to Deku hooking the wiring to the central grid. Of course they couldn't have any of the lights on since that'd draw attention, but they did have candles since they were dim enough, as long as they covered the windows. Opening it, she saw some food she went out and bought, along with the BLD bags that Deku filled for her. This made her very happy and even blush as she took one out and bit into it, enjoying how sweet his BLD was and how it made her squirm with happiness. Back with 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃, he was reading the envelope and his eyes kept getting darker and darker by the second. The leader of the Yakuza made his own father look like a saint for the sick, twisted things he was doing to someone named Eri. Well, this will make Deku happy to see that you got some information. But probably pisses him off to the point he'll kill anybody that moves, he said while taking a drag from his cigarette. Do you have any idea why he hates them so much? I asked him and his answer was very vague, said 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. Not really, I asked him and all he said was that they hurt someone he loves, said 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃. When she heard that, her eyes darkened. She was going to hurt the man who made Izuku angry and hurt those he loves. She quickly shook her head and looked at 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃 and decided to ask a question she's had on her mind since they attacked the dead mother. 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃, what's up with Aiza's black lightning? He looked at her before sighing. From what I remember him saying is that, with all his anger and hatred, along with the fact that his quirk is apparently still evolving and growing, it forced a evolution and he got that. From what he told me, it runs off his quirk's power and the angrier he gets, the stronger it is, said 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃. She nodded her head and looked at her BLD bag that had his BLD in it. What happened to you, Aizu? All the way back at Island, a good number of 1A was waiting by the elevator to go to the dance party. Man, I can't wait for this party to start, said Kirishima happily. It's gonna be so manly. Katsuki just looked at him and let a ghost of a smile cross his face as he looked out the window towards the rest of Island. Ever since he was beaten to a bloody pulp by Izuku, he changed. He was more quiet and reserved, almost never got angry or insulted anyone anymore. But that wasn't the most shocking thing that happened with him. He apologized to the entire class for being rude to them and said he'll try and keep his temper under control as best as he could. Katsuki was pulled out of his thoughts when he felt someone slap his back and he turned to see a smiling Kirishima. Come on bro, everyone is here, let's go inside. Right? He said following them. You're nothing more than a villain. Those words rang in his head and he clenched his fist in anger at himself. You're right, Izuku. I was never a hero. You were. He thought as he followed his class into the room the party was being held in. Leading them was Melissa, who explained that in this room was all the top scientists, financial backers, and some very famous heroes who are here to see new inventions and gear. I must say this place is very nice. I feel right at home, said 𝗳𝗍, pushing up his glasses before he walked away to go and mingle with the elite. The others broke up and walked around, looking, or some went to the table and ate some of the food that was offered. Time went by slowly for them, and then they heard someone clearing his throat over the mic. Turning, they all saw a middle-aged man with brown hair and blue eyes, along with a pair of glasses. Hello everyone, I'm sure most of you know me, but for those that don't, my name is 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, he said with a smile. Some clapping was heard through the room, and he waited for them to stop before he began to speak again. It's so wonderful to see you all. I'm proud to announce that this year we have lots of new inventions along with new inspiring scientists who created stuff that will one day surpass the things even I can make, he said. More clapping was heard as lots of them smiled as well. Now a gunshot was heard and a villain entered the room with a smile. All of you put your hands up or else, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 said darkly. What the he dash? A man was cut off when 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗃 aimed his gun at the man and shot him straight in the face, then turned it and shot his wife and daughter with zero hesitation. Fear struck everyone in the building and all might was about to move when 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗃 aimed his gun at a woman trying to protect her child. Surrender now or else I will kill even more, he said with a dark smile. Hearing that, his arms reluctantly went up showing he was surrendering. Good and dash. Boom, the ceiling caved in. A figure clad in a dark green hero suit with red arm gauntlets and white gloves smashed through the ceiling and landed directly on top of 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗃, shattering both his collarbones in an instant. Afk. He let out a pained scream, but before he could do anything, Deku raised his fist above him and smashed it down, which blew him through the floor while Deku stayed on the dance floor. Crack, a villain was cut off when Deeku's foot smashed into his side, shattering his left arm and all the ribs on the left side of his body, before he went flying into the wall. Deku turned to the other and raised his arms and focused. Black lightning shot out and electrocuted them to the point smoke and burns appeared on them and they fell to the ground unconscious. Everyone in the room was completely silent and in shock at seeing this, but in the back David saw this and his eyes caught onto what Deku was holding. The device that surpasses a quirk's limits. How did you get that? He shouted suddenly. Deeku's eyes turned and glared at him so fiercely that it felt as if death himself was glaring at him. Why don't you ask yourself and your dear friend Sam that? He growled before he punched the wall hard enough. The room shook. A body fell and it showed a bruised and bloody Sam, who looked like he was barely hanging on to life. Deku ignored the gasps of horror and grabbed Sam by his head and lifted him up. He then punched his back, where his kidney was. Talk. I made a deal. They would kill you and take the device. Along with PP paying me, he said while coughing up some BLD. Deku then punched him harder and they heard a crack when he did that. Everything. Sam started to cry but continued, I also made a request that they'd kidnap Melissa so I can have her to myself. Gasps of horror were heard and in the back Melissa felt horrified that her uncle in everything but BLD would do this and lust after her to the point that he'd have villains kidnap her just to have her. Good, now sleep, said Deku before he threw Sam's broken body across the room, where he smashed through the table and laid on the ground, a broken mess. He then dropped the device and smashed his foot on it, shattering it into a million pieces. Deku then turned and walked towards the hole. As he did, his eyes caught sight of his friends looking at him. Mina and Ochako looked at him with hands over their mouths. Ida was glaring at him, looking ready to attack if he tried anything. Katsuki looked at him in shock, and the others were a mixture of shock or horror. He said nothing before he jumped down the hole and followed the bloody trail of 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗃, who didn't get too far given the amount of injuries he was suffering from. Back with everyone else, they were frozen. They didn't know what to do, not even All Might did, but then Ochako ran forward and jumped down the hole, ignoring everyone telling her to come back. When she landed, she didn't see anything except for an empty lab, but then her eyes caught the BLD trail and she began to follow it. It took maybe a minute before she saw Izuku and he was interrogating 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗃. Deeku's fist smashed into his gut so hard, BLD came out of his mouth. Where is All for one? He said darkly. You do your worst, kid. I'm never gonna tell you SHT. He snapped at him with a glare. I will make you talk when we go back to Japan, he said before he grabbed his face and smashed his head through the wall, knocking him out cold. He then picked him up by the back of his shirt and began to drag him away, when someone called out to him, "Izuku!" Deku froze mid-stride and his eyes slowly turned until they landed on chocolate-brown orbs looking at him with tears in her eyes. "Izuku. Why are you doing this?" Ochako asked him while trying not to break down crying. They both stared at each other, with him saying nothing. Please Izuku. Tell me," she said. "Because I have to, simple as that," he said while suppressing his emotions as much as he possibly could. "Don't lie Izuku. This isn't like you. Please tell me. I love you Ochako. Please don't leave me behind." The memory flashed through her mind of her holding a crying Izuku and her heart squeezed painfully when this hit her. "Please. I want to help you Izuku," she said. "Uraraka," he said, not looking at her to hide the pain in his eyes, "it's best you just forget me, don't associate yourself with me, I'm a villain and heroes and villains can't work together." She watched him walk away from her and she felt a piece of her break seeing this. Her hand reached out to stop him but it was too late. Ochako had to watch him leave again and she was unable to stop him. "She said as she saw him disappear by turning a corner.